Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular Fairfax Town Council meeting at the Fairfax Women's Club. Wednesday, September 2nd, 2015. We're starting about 7 o'clock. So with that, like the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, Michelle, could we do a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Weinsoff.
Here.
Councilmember Reed.
Here.
Councilmember Lax. Here. Vice Mayor Goddard.
Here.
Mayor Kohler.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'd like a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
For those on this side, please put your mics on so you're recorded. And with that, I have nothing to announce or report out of closed session. I'm going to read the meeting protocol. The mayor shall maintain order at the meetings in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order, and the council has a responsibility to be a model of respectful behavior in order to encourage community participation and citizen input at council meetings. The council and the audience are expected to refrain from using profane language and/or ridiculing the character or motives of council members, staff, or members of the public, and to maintain the standards of tolerance and civility. Please turn off all cellular phones or place in silent mode. I'd like to make a few announcements. The Fairfax Food Pantry, Saturdays 9 to 11 at the Fairfax Community Church, 2398 Sir Francis Drake. Volunteers are always needed. For anybody who needs food, you don't need to show any ID or any proof of need, or any of your friends or neighbors. Please encourage them. It's a great opportunity. We're also having a Get Ready class. This is for disaster preparedness, September 17th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. at the Fairfax Library. We have vacancies on several boards and commissions: the Open Space Committee, the Volunteer Board, the Tree Committee, the General Plan Implementation Committee, and the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. Applications are available at Town Hall and on the town website. You can also contact Michelle, our town clerk, for more information. We're also having a senior social and age-friendly fair Saturday, September 19th, 10 a.m. to noon here at the Women's Club. Chipper Day for the Deer Park neighborhood will be September 26th at the Deer Park parking lot, 9 to 3 p.m. The town picnic is September 13th, noon to 5 p.m. at the Condrati Ball Field, and they need volunteers, so anybody who's listening or in the audience, please consider volunteering. Wine and cheese pairing. This is a fundraiser for the Park Committee, September 18th, 7 to 9 p.m. at the Women's Club. And one more announcement, tomorrow night there's going to be a ribbon cutting at 5 p.m. at Village Sake, which is our new Japanese restaurant on Fairfax Bolinas Road. So they opened last week, but we're going to have a grand opening tomorrow night, and I'll be there for the ribbon cutting. Yes, Renee?
Just wanted to announce that tomorrow night between 6 and 7 p.m. there will be an open house for the Fairfax Youth Club. Focuses mostly toward middle school, maybe young high school. If you have any interest in getting involved and having your kids participate, please come to the Youth Club, or what's known as the Community Center Youth Club next to Perry Park between 6 and 7 tomorrow night. I also wanted to make an announcement and urge strongly, given that school is back in session, we have lots and lots of children on the road on their bikes. We are in a little bit of an unfortunate place, but let's call it an opportunity to begin a really important discussion about bikes and walkers and businesses and sharing of our roadways, our pathways, our public rights of way. But we need to begin by being incredibly conscious of the kids that are riding to school. We have hundreds of kids riding out of the neighborhoods, trying to cross Sir Francis Drake. We're down a crossing guard and trying to move up Sir Francis Drake, and it really requires all of us to be completely aware and focused when we're driving. So that's a shout out to everyone who might be listening. Please just take an extra minute, take a deep breath, notice who's around you on their bikes, and know that everybody's just trying to get where they need to get to as safely and expeditiously as possible. So thank you so much.
John?
Mayor, yeah. I'd also like to make an announcement. The Gardeners Alliance which is basically a lot of people interested in gardening that are also interested in beautifying the town, are having 3 different work days. And basically what they're working on is the strip along Center Boulevard between the theater and the Good Earth, basically, that strips along there. A lot of people maybe noticed that need some attention, and these group of volunteers is giving it some attention. They have 3 action-packed, fun-filled work days. The first one's on Wednesday, September 16th, coming up 2 weeks from now. That's from 9 to 3. Actually, they're all from 9 to 3. The next one is the following Sunday, the 20th. That's Sunday 20th. Just go down to Center Boulevard along there sometime between 9 and 3, and it'll probably be fun. I've done it myself. October 11th is the 3rd opportunity to do that, and once again, it's from 9 to 3, and that's also a Sunday. Okay? Thanks.
Thank you. So with that, I'd like to open it up for open time for public expression, 3-minute time limit per person, and it has to be for items not on the agenda. Holly, want to give your name and
Holly
address?
Brackman, 30 Hickory. Hi. Thanks for making all those announcements. I'm going to reiterate one of them, the town picnic, coming up on September 13th on a Sunday. And we almost canceled it this year because we got really discouraged about the number of volunteers. It keeps dwindling. So just want to encourage people that enjoy the picnic, and I know there's a lot of people. And I think they probably don't know that, so that's why I'm coming here and letting people know that we need volunteers. It's a totally free event because we want to make sure that everybody and their kids, no matter what position they're in financially or whatever, can come and enjoy, as we like to say, an even playing field on the ball field. So, of course, we do take donations. But through the generosity of our sponsors in town, and they're not all completed this year, so I'll have to come back and thank them after the picnic. We have 2 jumpy houses, one for the bigger kids and one for the littler kids. We have the Tom Finch Band, and this year we're trying to kind of bring in some of the older kids, so he has a couple of his teen bands that are going to also play a couple songs. We have the very popular games, the 3-legged race, the watermelon eating contest, etc. Kind of a down-home feel to the picnic. What else do we have? We have we'll have food and beer from Iron Springs that they donate. We'll have that for sale. And it's a really fun event. And I just hope people can come and enjoy and then stay for cleanup and the tug-of-war at the end of the night. So thank you.
Thanks, Holly. Anybody else wanting to speak in open time? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to bring it to the consent calendar. Wanted to make one clarification for one of the items. Or David, did you want to go first?
No. I would, after public comment, be happy to make a motion to approve the consent calendar at the right time.
Okay. Just one clarification on the sidewalk program. We got a supplement that clears up a little confusion about how that program would work, which would be $500 for up to 10 sidewalks a grant, and then we would waive permit fees for any number of folks that would want to repair their sidewalks. And also that mid-year we could have a budget look and see if we want to increase the program if it's really popular. Anything you wanted to add to that, Garrett?
No, that you accurately described the supplemental staff report.
Thank you. So any other council members want to speak on
Can
this?
I add one thing to your comments? We also have a supplemental resolution for the Open Space Committee that will be the one you're consenting to on the consent calendar.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for putting that together. Renee, did you want to say something?
About another consent item, is that?
Okay, and what is that?
Number 6, and I don't want to pull it, but I was just thinking that it might be time for a more general update on the pavilion and what the state of the pavilion is and where we stand in terms of the 2 agencies that we're working through things. What's the timeline? Nobody really understands this, and I feel as though it's becoming a little bit of a giggle in the community, if we could be very nice about it, and people might appreciate knowing where we are at.
Sure. Item 6 has to do with the repair of the roof. In the staff report, it did kind of mention the reason we're moving forward with that is because of the delay to the seismic retrofit portion of the project. So to give you an update, actually in August, we actually met with the State Historic Preservation Officer, SHPO. We met with FEMA. We met with California Office of Emergency Services. And we also met with the Grayton Tribe. And everyone sat down in a room and we talked about the project. For many of the participants, it was the first time they've ever even seen the pavilion. So that was huge as a starting point. Many of them didn't realize we applied for a grant back in 2008, and it's taken us a long time just to get to this point. But the good thing from the meeting is we've got a commitment from everyone who attended that they would help us meet our goal for this fiscal year. And how it works is, for this fiscal year, we asked, we would be really happy if we can get, which is the next step, a memorandum of agreement, which includes what's called a treatment plan. A treatment plan basically identifies the process you undertake if you've ever to find any archaeological findings when you're doing work on the project. And that needs to be in place before you can even do anything. And so all the entities which have to sign off on this agreement agreed that they would make an effort to make that happen this year. And so what we're doing now is we're issuing an RFP to find a consultant to prepare the treatment plan. And then once that's in place, we can get them started and then hopefully then prepare the draft MOA, Memorandum of Agreement with the Treatment Plan, and get everyone to sign off on it by the end of this fiscal year. That would be a major accomplishment given where we're at, because anytime you have a tribe who's a separate nation, and you have FEMA, and you have the state, and you have another state entity, in addition to Office of Emergency Services, the State Historic Preservation Officer, it takes a long time. So we're pretty hopeful we might be able to move this along. Best case scenario, if they were to approve it, then we can actually start design and some preliminary work the following fiscal year, and then hopefully begin construction the year after that.
Real quickly, what is FEMA's involvement?
Sorry, FEMA is the entity that provided the funding. They provided $450,000, and then the town committed the match of $150,000.
Because a pavilion is a potential shelter, emergency shelter?
No, actually, I'm sorry. I should have backed up. It's actually, we applied for it under a hazard mitigation program, which means that it's susceptible to seismic issues, and so we applied a grant to do seismic retrofit, and the project also includes all the ADA improvements as a part of that project. Originally, we were going to include the roof, but that's not going to happen for a while, so that's why we're proposing just to repair the roof at this time.
Thank you. With that, I'd like to open it for the consent calendar for public comment. If you could state your name, please.
But first,
You need
push
to
the button.
push the button, please.
Stan Rosenfeld, 12 Raleigh Court, Fairfax. And I want to thank the council and the mayor for your signature just saw on the proclamation to declare September 2015 Prostate Cancer Awareness Month in the town of Fairfax, as you've done in previous years. I think that's wonderful, and I've gotten some newspaper coverage from that. And Michelle said I have 3 minutes, but you know, it's either 30 minutes or 3 minutes, or 30 seconds. So I'll just really short, and just remind everybody here, and people you know, men and women know men, to go to your doctor and discuss having a prostate cancer test. Just as many men die each year, a few more actually, than women die from breast cancer, die from prostate cancer. Some people don't know that. And I'll leave you just with a couple of what's kind of telling statistics to me, and that is that when prostate cancer is detected early, which is what the PSA test is all about, the survival rate is nearly 100%. But when it's detected after it's gone to other parts of the body, it drops to about 28%. So I think that, I'll leave you with that. That tells the story. I've left some fact sheets from the American Cancer Society on the back table and some of my cards. So what I do, I'm a volunteer with a lot of different prostate cancer organizations, Marin General Hospital, University of California, San Francisco. That's kind of what I do. It's a weird hobby, help men with prostate cancer. And so my phone number is on the card. If you have anybody here has any additional questions or wants to have more discussion, feel free to call me anytime. And thank you again for the proclamation.
Thank you very much. And just so you're aware, this is televised, and from what I understand, we're one of the hottest games in town as far as TV. So you've got a pretty wide audience.
Well, that's great. That's wonderful.
We're well attended.
Good. Thank you much.
Thank you very much.
What channel is that?
What's that?
Which channel is that?
It's on channel 27.
27.
For Comcast. On AT&T, I'm not sure of the number.
Don't worry. Thank you all
And
very
it's
much.
on the town
Thank you for your
website,
help.
too.
Yes, thank you,
Archived.
John.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for all your work.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. We actually have two presentations tonight. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, bringing it back.
consent?
Thank you, David.
So I'll move that the council adopt the consent calendar in total.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thanks for that reminder, David. Okay, now moving on to presentations. We have two tonight. The first is the Citizens Climate Lobby mission regarding the carbon tax, and that'll be Rachel Guinness. So Rachel, do you want to come up and speak? And also, some of you may know Rachel. She works quite a bit on junior second units, which we adopted in our housing element. I'm sure we'll hear more from her in the future, but for now, she's going to talk about the Citizens Climate Lobby. Thanks, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you, and good evening. Thank you for having me here this evening. So yes, my name is Rachel Guinness, and I have a local nonprofit, but tonight I've been asked to speak with you about my work with another wonderful nonprofit, nonpartisan, grassroots organization that is focused on national policies for addressing climate change. I founded the Marin chapter of the Citizens Climate Lobby, which advocates for carbon fee and dividend legislation, sometimes referred to as a carbon tax. This legislative proposal places a steadily rising price on carbon-emitting fuels as they enter the economy at the well, the mine, the port of entry. All the revenues are then returned to households in the form of an evenly distributed monthly dividend check, similar to what they have in Alaska, but in reverse, if you will, as this payment would help keep fossil fuels in the ground. This may sound far-fetched, and I assure you it is not. In fact, Mayor Kohler was just able to join us last month at an event where our founder, Marshall Saunders, discussed how far the organization has come, and that the issue is no longer if Congress is going to price carbon, but when, and how will the revenues be redistributed. I was one of 25 volunteers who showed up 6 years ago to discuss this clear and elegant strategy for reducing our dependence on carbon emissions with representatives in the House and Senate. This year, over 800 people arrived on Capitol Hill to meet with members of Congress. We are experiencing broad support as economists and scientists agree that pricing carbon will grow the economy, create millions of jobs, and save lives. This change may in fact be closer than you realize, but everyone's voice is needed to see it through. So it was wonderful for Mayor Kohler that Mayor Kohler could very eloquently talk to the role that cities are playing, to address the carbon issue. And I would like to commend Fairfax for its leadership in the Marin Climate and Energy Partnership, as well as on creating its climate action plan. I had the pleasure of addressing the Climate Action Committee last month on another subject that hopefully will also help reduce climate emissions. You see all the efforts we are putting forward today to address the issue. I'm so sorry, I have to read. All the issue will be accelerated and expanded by creating a clear market signal indicating carbon emission fuels will be getting more expensive. And new ideas addressing climate change will be incubated as we look to a playing field that assesses the true cost of energy. I am proud to say that Marin was the first county in the nation to send a letter of support for this legislative proposal, and the Marin Energy Authority was the first power company to publicly endorse it. Congress needs to hear from you in both your personal and professional roles. The Citizens Climate Lobby is a very enthusiastic and inspired group of volunteers because we are not against anything, we are for something. With respect and appreciation, we work with local, state, and federal leaders to establish a real price on carbon and protect people and businesses from rising costs by returning the revenue to households. Every letter to the editor and op-ed that gets published, every editorial board endorsement and handwritten letter to Congress gets us closer to the best first step we can take to address climate change and sea level rise, using the power of our economy to make the shift toward a livable world. Dr. James Hansen of the Goddard Space Institute, the man in the 80s who made Congress aware of climate change, said, "Most impressive is the work of the Citizens Climate Lobby. If you want to join the fight to save the planet and save creation for your grandchildren, there is no more effective step you could take than becoming an active member of this group. The Citizens Climate Lobby does more than teach you to advocate for a true price on carbon. It helps you find your voice and empowers you to make a difference not only in your own life, but in the lives of others. If you're interested in learning more and possibly participating, you can obviously look it up at the citizensclimatelobby.org. They have an introductory call every Wednesday at 5, and we have a wonderful Marin chapter, which I'm no longer the head of. And that's it. Thank you so much for having me here tonight, and I look forward to talking to you again on another related but different subject, affordable housing.
Thank you, Rachel. Before you sit down, it may be that some members of the council might have some questions for you. Any questions? No, okay. Thank you, Rachel. And when I first met Rachel, she said she was not a good speaker, but you've done a great job.
If you don't mind when people shake when they talk.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay, with that, we're going to have our next presentation by... Yes.
Can I just add, Rachel will be giving a presentation on the 17th to the Planning Commission on junior second units.
Great. Oh, good. Wonderful. Okay, and thank you. So our next speaker is Kathleen Woodcock. I have known Kathleen for so many years, more through recreation, and we got to talking recently, and I realized that she worked for the Marin Center for Independent Living. And I've asked her to speak about aging in place and the services of MCIL. So thanks for coming, Kathleen.
Thanks, Barbara. It's so nice to be here. I really feel honored that you guys invited me. My name is Kathleen Woodcock, and I'm the Director of Community Resources with the Marin Center for Independent Living. We're a small nonprofit in Santa Fe located on 4th Street, serving older adults and people with disabilities. We've been doing that in Marin County for about 37 years. We're really proud of our work. Let me just give you a couple statistics here about Marin County. You might all know this. There are about 250,000 population. About 65,000 people are 65 years and older. About 75% of our older adults own their own home. They wish to age in place. Our most rapidly growing population is the 80 to 90-year-old segment, and that's outpaced our general growth. We have if we have 65,000 older adults, most of them want to age in place, about 95% actually, and we have 1,300 assisted living beds in this community. Where are we going to put everyone? We need to keep people in their homes and aging in place. So we have what I like to refer to as wraparound services for people in need. so that they continue staying in their own homes. About 55% of our clients come out of local hospitals. Most of them are over the age of 65. They've had a fall in age-related illness, stroke, cancer, dementia, MS. Of course, we have also people who have had traumatic brain injury as well, but a lot of accidents and things like that. We help them to be able to get back into their home through nursing home transitions. We cover all those costs plus caregiving to get them back in their homes. We have a home modification program where we will go in through the block grants. We go into people's homes and we can modify their homes, widen their doorways, put in grab bars, walk-in showers, sinks that they can roll under. We put in ramps. We all do this free of charge. We also have assistive technology. I had a lady come into my office last week who was going in for hip surgery, and her doctor said, you're going to need a shower chair and a walker and maybe a wheelchair and some crutches. She came into our office and we gave her all that stuff. It's all free. We have it there. We accept, we have durable medical equipment to give out to the community. Along with that, many people who are aging and want to age in place need caregivers. Activities of daily living are difficult for them. We have an unbelievable caregiving registry, and we also, it's actually online as well, called Quick Match, and it's a high-quality, low-cost caregiving service. Just as a sideline, this country will be adding 1.3 million new jobs by 2020 in home care. We need home care in this country. So if you go to a private agency, you will pay, and you guys have probably seen private agencies popping up all over because of our demographics here. We have the highest aging population of any county in California. Private agencies charge about $25 to $40 an hour for the caregiver, and that caregiver, you don't have any choice in who the caregiver is that they're sending. And the caregivers make about $10 to $12 of that. With our registry, we have about 200 caregivers on our registry. They charge $18 to $22 an hour. We cap it at that. All the money goes to the caregiver. So the client is paying 50, 100% less than a private agency, and the caregiver's making about 100% more. It's a really, I mean, it just makes common sense. We serve a lot of people, actually through my church, that could go somewhere else, but people are living longer, and they need their money to last. Couple other notes, we have we do benefits counseling for under and uninsured people, get them on and off SSDI. Instead of going to an attorney, we will do all that work. We're Social Security trained. We have probably the most amazing breast cancer program in Marin, where and I know a lot of us can relate to this because breast cancer in this county is higher than any other county. We have financial scholarships. Most of the gals that come to us are underinsured or uninsured. In many cases, head of household. They're self-employed. They live month to month, and they have their children. And for them to walk away and have chemotherapy or treatment for a month is devastating. I mean, they will lose their home. They cannot make their payments. They can't go through their chemotherapy treatments easily. So we have financial scholarships to pay their rent or mortgage, and we also connect them with our partners in the community for organic, healthy food to be delivered so they don't have to cook. And we get them into different fitness programs, Sunflower Wellness. We just put an entire package together for them. I've been, and I'm probably talking a lot, and I know I don't probably have, just give me the look when I have to stop. I was introduced to this Marin Center for Independent Living 25 years ago, and my brother broke his neck in a tragic accident. And MCIL was the first organization to reach out to my family just so we could get him back into the community. And it's just an honor to be working with this group. We do great work. Benefits counseling, breast cancer, medical equipment, nursing home transitions, independent living skills, and information and referral, and we also do housing as well. We do a lot of work.
Well, thank you, Kathleen. I want to also say at our age-friendly fair that's coming up, I believe MCIL is participating in that fair. So I don't know if that's you or somebody else.
I think it'll probably be me. And I see you guys have Wi-Fi in here, so I can show our registry, our online registry.
Yeah.
We have an amazing registry for people that, if they want to call and get 3 referrals from us, we will give them a username and password, and they can look at the people the caregivers on our registry. They can hear them, see when they're available, see what their skills are. Most of them are CNAs or RNs. It's an amazing registry.
Well, it sounds like a wonderful and really wonderful service, and there are so many people that I know with their parents aging, not wanting to move, wanting to age in place, and typically needing caregivers, and it's really hard to get that right match. So it sounds like you guys are a perfect place. Other questions of members of the council? David?
Just one. I've noticed in this community, and I'm sure it's just not Marin. I think it's in the American spirit to really enjoy volunteering, even within our very busy schedules. People enjoy the opportunity to volunteer and assist their neighbors. And we have a senior living next to us, and at times she reaches out and asks for a little assistance, going to the store or whatever, or my wife goes over and hangs around and chats for a while when it's best for her. But sometimes that match is often a hesitant step between a member of the community who would gladly enjoy the opportunity. Not only that, those of us of the younger generation are blithely ignorant of where we came from, and so many of our seniors can give so much great context.
Right.
And on the other side, there's maybe a hint of embarrassment. Hard to get older, hard to realize that you aren't as spry as you once were. And that matching, I think, is so critical. And I guess I'm sort of speaking to the audience above your head and saying, if you live in a community with a senior, please don't be hesitant to approach a senior and volunteer. And to any seniors who might be drifting off to sleep as they watch us, because I do understand we can put people to sleep at a stunningly effective rate, to reach out to members of your neighborhood and ask for that little bit of assistance. I think it would bring both together and just be a nice match.
No question about that. And, we find that it's generational as well. This is a group of people, a generation that has worked really hard all their life, and they're very proud, and they don't want help, and they don't think they need help, but they do appreciate it when you reach out.
Renee?
Yeah, I actually had a couple questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
it
my
sounds like you do more than is humanly possible as an organization. But that is my question: is what percentage of the folks that come to you needing assistance are you able to serve?
We serve about 1,000 people a year, and many of them are multiple services within our organization. So about 1,000 people a year. We run on a very lean budget, under $1 million. And the work we do is amazing. As a matter of fact, we have an annual fundraiser up here at Meadow Club every year and raise about $250,000 additional dollars so we can put that back into services.
So what I'm just trying to get a sense of where the need is and how much is actually being met. So if you say you serve 1,000, which is awesome, are you needing to turn people away?
I think that we always do the best we can to, money's always an issue. And the amount of help that we have within the office, where most everyone in there is part-time or full-time. We only have 9 staff. So the demand is greater than the supply, yes. So.
Thank you.
Peter? Wait a minute, Kathleen. You're very popular.
I like this.
No, this is great to hear about this resource. I'm looking at, I have 2 elderly parents that are looking at assisted care living, so it's very timely for me. I appreciate that. And did you bring any materials with you?
I did. I actually have folders over here for everyone, if you'd like me to bring them up.
Yeah, I definitely like one. And then
Kathleen, you can just give them to the clerk, and she'll give them to us. Thank you.
And then two other.
There are additional ones outside for members of the audience if they'd like one.
2 other quick questions. Do you have opportunities for people in the community to volunteer and help out seniors and so forth?
You know, not so much. We do for our fundraiser, but not so much in the office. We do have volunteer receptionists come in, but it's hard to, it's very hard to coordinate more additional volunteers in the
Sure.
office.
And then do you also offer services for people with, you know, that aren't seniors that may have like injuries or disabilities?
Oh, absolutely. We have a traumatic brain. You know, it really started out of a group that was with people with physical disabilities. The movement started back in Berkeley with a gentleman who was going to school, Ed Roberts, and he was applied to Cal, and he got in, but then they found out he was in an iron lung, and they couldn't accommodate him. And he went out, you know, he was one that first got the curb cuts in for accessibility and things like that. So, yes, a lot of physical disability. My brother's a quadriplegic. He's in his 40s.
Great, thank you.
And young people as well.
Thank you very much,
Thank you
Kathleen.
very much.
We really appreciate you coming, and thanks for MCIL joining our senior fair as well. I think you're a great resource. Thank you. Okay, well, with that, we will open it up to council member reports. And why don't we start with Peter?
Yes, thank you. I attended the Marin Clean Energy meeting this month, and as an alternate to the mayor, it was very, as always, very exciting. A lot of interesting stuff going on. And actually, an announcement I wanted to make that I forgot to make related to MCE. On Tuesday, September 22nd, they're going to be having a training for advocates, for folks that go out in the community and become a clean energy ambassador. It's a great way to get involved in helping everyone learn more about real ways to not only battle global warming, but also save money and learn and teach about opportunities for making energy efficiency improvements in your own home. And that'll be on Tuesday, September 22nd at 10 a.m. at the Marin Clean Energy offices at 1125 Tamalpais Avenue. And if you'd like more information, you can go to the website at mcecleanenergy.org/RSVP.
Okay, Renee?
First of all, I want to send a shout out of gratitude to the community of Fairfax for a fabulous event this past Sunday called Streets for People. Thousands of people came out and wandered through the street and enjoyed the use of their public space, their public commons, and it was nothing more than something that the founder of Ciclavia down in Colombia called the releasing of the energy of the streets back to the people. So people just enjoyed themselves in the street. This is done all over the world in the Open Streets movement, livable cities, and Fairfax has its start and something that I think is very special for the community. One picture I want to leave with you, a little image for your minds, is Rose Tabor, as you all know, the owner of Rainbow Fabrics and wonderful member of the community, decided to come out and give free cotton candy to all of the children, big and small, of Fairfax. So early morning, Rose came out. She set up, the truck came in at the last minute. Her husband got out the big cotton candy machine. The sun started to get warmer and warmer. Rose doesn't love the heat, but she stuck by this cotton candy machine, and she stood there until the band called the Disrupted Continuum, which was a heavy-duty rock band, and she doesn't like loud noise, blasted her away, and she was covered in cotton candy, sticky red, and she had the biggest smile on her face that I've ever seen, and made lots and lots of people happy. So just take that image away. I'll be quick on my really, really important things. The Ross Valley School District did deny the petition for the Ross Valley Charter School. They will be appealing to the county next Tuesday night, so we'll see where that takes them. I attended Marin Sanitary's Open House Customer Appreciation Day. It was mostly small children who had the best questions to ask I've ever heard. There is hope for us in our waste reduction efforts. You should take advantage of going to Marin Sanitary and taking their tour. It's impressive what's happening with our waste and diversion. I was part of a focus group yesterday at Marin City Community Services District, a discussion about equity and how diversity makes us stronger as relates to our environmental movement. So voices coming out from the canal, from Marin City, talking about the issues that we face on the ground, social equity, where is it that sea level rise is going to really wash us away, and it's in those communities where people are really trapped, that we need to make some change. And I think I'm confident in saying that a coalition of folks are coming together and having those voices as part of the bigger conversation. Rose, I just talked about you in a very positive way. And I met with Zero Waste Marin. We're talking about a schools assessment report, which is coming out so that we can try to standardize the way we do our recycling and composting in the schools. There's new legislation coming down around commercial composting, which will require our schools to do a much better job. And I attended a luncheon today with the Marin Coalition. That is an organization founded, I'm not actually sure if it was founded by Susan Kirsch, but today the coalition brought Steve Kinsey and Pat Eklund together to discuss the state of ABAG and the the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and the funding for ABAG potentially being cut after December, which would then transfer all of this local control that we talk so much about to an even higher up the food chain, not regional planning agency, but state planning agency. So this is opening up a new conversation, and it was a fabulous opportunity to learn, and they will have subsequent workshops coming up. You can look them up on Marin Coalition. I know, Barbara, I'm almost there. I think that's it. Thank you.
John? Thank you, Renee.
Hi. Yeah, I attended a number of the same things that Renee did, especially the Streets for People event, which was pretty good last Sunday. But I guess, well, I'll start up at the top anyway. You already talked about the Ross Valley School District meeting. I went to that one and also another one last night. I went to the Transportation Authority's Safe Routes to School subcommittee thing that I'm on, and basically we carved out some more money from wherever we could find it to keep our crossing guard program as big as we could make it, and so that was, good. I attended actually one of our planning commission meetings here, which was an unusual thing because usually the council doesn't go to the planning commission meetings because sometimes something might come to us, but this was for one in my neighborhood, so I had to recuse if it ever came here. So it was very entertaining to see that, it's dedicated individuals dealing with real stuff with neighbors, trying to figure out how they can get along, which is the essence of what community should do. Volunteer board meeting, a lot of different issues around there. We've been interviewing leaders in the community to see what kind of volunteer needs they need and what kind of things that they can offer to the community. And a report for that is kind of going out to all those people that got interviewed, and that's going to come back and be presented to not only volunteer board but the community as well. I went to Deb Hubsmith's memorial, which was, I think the community lost a huge leader in a community member who was really great. She lived in Fairfax. She did amazing, phenomenal things in her short 46 years, starting national organizations, organizing 15,000 schools, safe routes to school people and stuff like that. Anyway, I attended her memorial. she died. We put about a week and a half ago. Anyway.
We adjourned a previous meeting in her memory.
Yeah. Streets for People was pretty good. It had tons of facets to it. I talked a lot about the trails system.
It was
that's around
fabulous.
here. Yeah, it was great. Everybody, if you didn't go there, go next year. It's really good. I talked to a lot of people who didn't really realize. I mean, I was talking about the trails as I always do, where I tend to quite a bit, and talked to quite a few people about the whole reason why it's important to know about the trails in your neighborhood in case of fire, in case of any kind of other emergency, but also just to walk around and meet your neighbors. And there's a whole, there's maps of them on the Fairfax Volunteers website under Trails Awareness Project. I went to Deer Park Villa several different times to meet, and it's around the sound
Maybe we'll
issues
do
there that I
that
will talk
during-
about later at this meeting.
Right.
And then last night I was at the Ross Valley School Board meeting, and this was basically about, well, I guess it's kind of your area, the Flood Zone 9 stuff was on their agenda, and I saw that Deer Park School was on the list for retention basin potential for them to look at. And I, in fact, encouraged them that Deer Park neighborhood does flood every year, so that may be something that they could do for that neighborhood, depending on how it went together. So I was informed afterwards that you're not in support of that. So
Okay.
No, in fact, not only am I not in support, it will be
David,
killed.
do you want to give your council member report?
Yeah, when we gather again in October, there will have been another Flood Zone 9 meeting, and at that meeting I will hopefully, and I trust, report back to the council that there's not going to be a detention basin at that site. It's just not going to happen. John, you can recall the many conversations we had about the liquefaction issues on those hillsides there. We all know the tragedy on Wood Lane in the last. Talk about something that's much better, much more positive. I want to inform the council of the work that's going on at the little park in Klaus Circle. As the council knows, we allocated $12,500 out of the excellent idea of Measure A, a county measure some years back, which allocates funds to, among other things, improving our small parks. And the council was generous enough to allocate funds. And the first, I would say, of 3 steps of rejuvenating this park has now been underway. The community, in collaboration with the contractor that we hired, and I certainly want to thank Garrett and Mark Lockerbie for their attention to this. First step was to remove all of the vegetation except for the trees from the site, which has now been completed. It's completely denuded of the Cape Ivy and other non-natives. The juniper is gone. I imagine the rats that were living there have now relocated, hopefully not into people's basements, but have decided to find other communities that are much more hospitable to them. The second stage, which we're now searching for a contractor, is to actually cover the site with cardboard and other things to snuff out the evil non-natives. And then after that period ends, let's think midwinter or so, in collaboration with folks in the local community to get into some designing of the park, to bring in some water-wise natives, and also I think Renee's idea of those Washington Square Park-like chess and checker tables and age-appropriate benches, working closely with Jody Timms on that. So this will be a park that not only sort of matches or sees the vision of the local community, but also addresses very carefully the age-friendly issue that Jody works on so assiduously and with so much talent. And with that, I'll keep you informed as the months roll by and our park finds a new life.
Thank you, David. Okay, I'll keep mine short. I attended the Citizens Climate Lobby event. I attended the Fairfax Climate Action Committee meeting in early August. Attended the Marin Telecommunications Board meeting, a couple of special town council meetings. I attended another subcommittee for the Marin Clean Energy Expansion Group. We're looking at policy issues for including other cities. We have letters of interest from Lafayette, Walnut Creek, all the cities and towns in Napa County, City of Davis, Yolo County, and there are others. So it's not that all of these would come to fruition, but we want to really look at, can we really add these and what kind of parameters would be necessary before you can include more within Marin Clean Energy. I attended the Fairfax Finance Committee, which we just approved our contract moving forward. Attended the Community Media Center of Marin Board meeting, and we're wrestling with some issues through CMCM right now. Also attended the fabulous Streets for People event, and I actually worked the climate action table for a while. And our focus now is getting folks to switch to Marin Clean Energy, Deep Green, and we're starting to see an uptick there from our efforts. So with that, we can move on to the town manager's report.
Nothing to report other than I attended the fabulous Streets for People and rode a bike that made a smoothie.
Anything on the Wall property that you want to report? And no news or nothing?
Yeah, no news other than what we reported in the past.
Yeah, could you elaborate? I hate to take you back across the timeline, but in my community, I can barely step out to get the mail without having 3 members of the community assure me that development is well on its way on the Wall property. Can you definitively address the status of the non-development on that site?
Okay, so no applications have been submitted. As we previously reported, 10 conditional certificates of compliance were requested, and that's more of a determination of whether or not a lot is legal or not. We issued 10 conditional certificates of compliance, which indicate lots are not legal and they need to comply with the state subdivision map, as well as all the town codes and zoning regulations. And no application has been submitted at this time.
I might just add, David, so the owner, Marshall Rothman, attended an open space committee meeting, which I attended last month with the concerned neighbors of the Wall property who have organized a group. And so he's been meeting with those neighbors, walking the property actually several times. And while he represents an investors group, it's not just him. The neighbors are reporting that, you know, he seems willing to do things that would be amenable at least to them. So what that means as far as coming back, he did want to meet with me and another member of the Open Space Committee who's also on the Planning Commission. I explained to him that that wouldn't be appropriate given that whatever would go to the Planning Commission ultimately will probably need to be decided and also be appealed, most likely. So, I think that was the wind. So right now, I've asked him to go back and talk to members of the Open Space Committee because that's what the general plan envisions, is really working with them. So nothing is happening right now, but I suspect over the next year there will be something ultimately.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I forgot one thing that our planning director pointed out is it is a possibility that the owner may request a special workshop with the Planning Commission just to talk about his ideas. Not submit an application, but just have a discussion with the Planning Commission. But that hasn't been set yet. It's just a possibility.
Okay, thank you. So are we finished with your town manager report? Could we take a 5-minute break and then we'll convene to the regular agenda? Okay. we're going to start with the regular agenda. Discuss, consider the residents' petitions regarding the noise ordinance and the status of Deer Park Villa's improvements to mitigate noise. Garrett, would you like to do the staff report?
Sure, it's actually going to be a fairly short staff report. I'm really only going to focus on the council action from July 15th. So at the July 15th meeting, the council at that time considered the different actions taken by the owner at Deer Park Villa. One was talking about going forward with a new sound system, talked about some different ideas. At that time, the business owner indicated he had purchased the system but didn't have time, hadn't installed it by the meeting date. What the council did, it continued the item actually to this meeting this evening and asked and put the discussion on the use permit on hold. And so at this meeting, the staff report does indicate that Councilmember Reed has met with the property owner and I believe had the system tested, and it'd be good within this report that he be given an opportunity to go ahead and share what he discovered. In terms of everything else, really from the staff perspective, really the key issue for the council this evening, we think, is whether or not the sound system appears or is going to be a significant impact on reducing noise. I think what you decide regarding that sound system could dictate what your next steps are. As we see it, some of your options are you could determine the sound system is adequate and take no further action. You could determine that it's unclear whether the sound system is going to be effective and continue us to another meeting to allow an opportunity to test the system, see it, hear it at events and see whether that's effective. And then kind of the general third option is you could decide that whether the system is effective or not as effective or still yet to be tested, that you could decide to go ahead and refer the item to the Planning Commission, and you could decide to continue your discussions on the noise ordinance. So the staff report talks a little bit more about the referral to the Planning Commission and the noise ordinance, but I'm recommending that we really don't go into that discussion in terms of the staff report and really maybe hear from Councilmember Reed and then the owner and the neighbors before we go down, talk about those other options for you. And that concludes the staff report.
Okay, John, you want to give us your report?
All right,
Thank
sure.
you for spending the time on this.
Yeah, sure. I went several times and met with the owner, Deer Park Villa, and saw the progress. Basically, he has purchased a sound system which is best described as a bunch of smaller, high-quality speakers that are arranged around different locales within the the Redwood Grove, and then there's which is kind of where weddings happen, and then there's some dining areas that are outside also in the Redwood Grove and a little bit adjacent to it, and then there's a section that's over towards the actual building where the restaurant is, which I can refer to as the bar area. And I think in the past, the sound system has been set up with a couple of big speakers that are on one side of the Redwood Grove, and that's the opposite side from where the bar section is. And so at that point in the evening, it appears that those speakers are turned up pretty loud so that the sound goes, the 100 and some feet over to the bar area, and people there, can be heard over the conversation. So there are several zones so that the amplification system can be turned on some sets of speakers and others, and so you can turn on just the ones in the bar area, or you can turn on the ones just in the Redwood Grove area, or you could, there's three basic zones, I think. And so, you can kind of keep the sound where the people are and lower the overall volume and still have it be balanced right for the people who are standing there. And so the idea is that you get less sound, excess sound going that's going to go in other places also. So I went by several weeks ago. There was a wedding going on, and I guess, it was not particularly loud. I mean, I gather the different weddings they're all probably a little different, but I witnessed, how much there was music going on, a little bit of dancing. It wasn't like, I was not there for the big announcement of the bride and groom, and here they are, and I gather that that is the loudest section of the celebration. However, I did hear the other parts there, and I also was there later that evening to kind of get the ambient level, and it was kind of interesting that, it's this time of year, crickets are at 54 decibels. It was impressive. But at any rate, yesterday I went by, and they had, now the new system is wired in. They had the sound engineer there. They had the person with a DJ company, and their main DJ that they use, that would probably be the most likely technician, if you will. A DJ is more than a technician, but who's operating the sound system. And they seemed to be well tutored in what was going on. Basically, we're trying to keep the sound there at the wedding and not have it spread out, and that's the objective of this new sound system. And I should probably at this point out that in the past, the way the contracts are set up with the weddings, the person setting up the wedding generally has a DJ that they prefer and they contract with. Going forward, the owner was saying that those contracts are going to be shaped to encourage them quite strongly to use the in-house DJ, because the in-house DJ is going to be familiar with the system and how to manage the sound, and and get the best sound out of the system, but also to keep it down at a level where it's not going to bug the neighbors too much. So yesterday there was the old style sound system with two big speakers up going out, and we heard examples of different, like what happened, the kinds of levels that are set up when the bar is going on, and we heard that with the old way and with the new way with just the speakers in the bar. And there was sound readings taken at the fence line at the time, and then we also did it, what it's kind of like with the general dancing, and then we at the grand finale, if you will, it was basically the DJ used the old sound system and announcing a bogus speech for the bride and groom arriving, and the kinds of things that would be said. So it was a lot of speaking and then some music overlaid after that, first with the old system, then with the new system, and the readings were taken there. There was a lot of readings, and perhaps the owner will talk about the readings more specifically, but I can say that generally the decibel level with the new system seemed to drop around 5-6 points with the new system versus the old. With the speech, with the announcing of the bride and groom kind of thing, there was a spike, which is like it says, hey, on the microphone, which is probably the most disturbing thing. That had a spike of 64 decibels. When, and obviously the whole speech was, was down. It was averaging in the high 50s, a little bit over 55, 56. I think might have had a peak of 58, except for that spike. With the new sound system, it was down around 54, 55, and that spike of the voice doing that was, I think, 58. I'm doing this from memory on that one. So it's significantly less, from 64 down to 58. So it appears at this point to me that, the objective of having, the new sound system result in a lower sound spreading out from it seems to be a good direction to go in. You know, I mean, because it seems to be lowering the amount of sound. That said, a lot of it is, you know, how this sound system is used. It certainly seemed loud enough to be heard over talking and you know, about the right amount for, you know, a dance type of party kind of thing. And if that results in 5 or 6 decibels less at the property line, I think that's a good thing. You know, there'll have to be some tweaking of the system. I'm encouraged that people will be, clients will be encouraged to use this in-house DJ who basically knows something, because if you get somebody who's not familiar with it, they'll crank it up a little higher because they're enthusiastic, shall we say. I guess I could answer some clarifying questions if the council has that, or we
I
could
think
go
I
from-
have one,
Yeah.
well, maybe a couple of questions, is that I think from what you mentioned that for a lot of the contracts that have been used up until very recently, and maybe some that are still in play, they will be using their own DJs, and therefore they won't have the familiarity with the system, so we may not be able to tell.
That's correct. I mean, I think that some of these contracts for weddings were signed last year.
Okay.
And I mean, I think there was fewer of them signed because of the unsureness of the, you know, like what's going to happen with their noise permit and et cetera, or their use permit rather.
Right, and so for the DJ that was there last night, that's Mike's DJ? Is that right?
Yeah, it's a DJ company.
Okay, so that group, at least from what maybe I didn't hear you correctly, but it sounds like to me the decibel levels might have been more within the range of 50 to 55, except for that spike?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, so that's good to know. Any other clarifying questions of the council before? We may want to have Mike come up first before we have public, and maybe he can talk more about this. But any other questions of the council for John right now?
Yeah, John, I was wondering if you had any discussions about how the sound system would work with a live band versus a DJ, and especially with that new configuration of the sound system.
Yeah, well, we didn't talk about it in terms of that outside space. Mike had told me that his policy was if there was a live band, there's going to be indoors at an earlier conversation. So, you know, a live band outside in the Grove was not something that we were talking about.
Okay, Mike, you want to give us more about the system and kind of what's going on and kind of how you see things going forward? Maybe you also clarify if live bands would be inside.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike.
For every 100 events we have, there's probably one live band, and our goal for 2016 is to put bands inside. Sometimes there's live music outside, but it'd be more like a harp or something very low key. I had a group come in and they had a live band, and you know, we've had a lot of live bands that stay within the rules, and I determined that they couldn't, so I moved them inside, and not after, I determined prior to the thing. So I think what John realized yesterday was that, number one, the surround sound really does work. I think, John, your numbers, in memory of those numbers, actually were a little bit on the high side, and I got some notes here to clarify those. But with the way the 4 zones work, for instance, there was music that didn't register above the ambient levels out on the fence lines because, for instance, when it's the cocktail hour, which is right after the ceremony, the speakers only are now down by the bar that you mentioned, and the music couldn't even be recorded at the fence line. In fact, the only place it spiked on the fence line was when we were near a neighbor that had an air conditioner or generator, something was on there, and that jumped up to 54 with the generator. Then when we moved away from the generator, it dropped down to 45 to 47. That's with music, by the way. So the ambient level, when we took the ambient level yesterday with no music, and at the fence line, it was approximately 43 to 46, so we took a range. With the, and like John knows, we're trying to dial in the surround sound. It's just not turn it on and it's perfect. But it was definitely, without a doubt, 2 or 3 decibels lower. No matter how you used it, it had less impact out on the fence line. So it has maybe a little bit more impact within the grove and the zones. And so it could have sounded even louder in the grove than the 2 speakers allowed for, but those 2 speakers traveled farther to the fence lines, if you follow me on that. So I think everybody was pretty darn pleased with the results of the surround sound. The spikes, most of the readings, John, were between 45 and 50. The one time when it went to that 64 spike was almost done on purpose because he really bellowed it out. The introduction to the bride and groom, generally speaking, is no more than a 3-minute deal. And the average on that particular area was between 50 and 54, with the one spike of 64, when he said someone's name really loud, just to kind of see what would happen. The professionals that I've hired, called Runaway DJs, are out of Santa Rosa. They're 2 brothers, the Craven brothers, John and David. And I met them at one of our weddings, and we just hit it off really well. They're real true professionals. And so basically we've contracted out with them to be the in-house DJ at Deer Park. And they're well, John met them. He can tell you what he thought of them. And they're the consummate professionals. And no matter what speakers you have, by the way, it's really about the way you manage the wedding. So by the time it's an introduction, for instance, which is the introduction to the bride and groom, which is generally speaking the loudest part of the entire event, it's obviously right prior to the dinner. So everyone has finally sat down. Prior to that, there's nothing but background music. And we even, because we have the zones, we can modify that. We don't have to have background music in the whole grove. We just have it down by the cocktail area. So it's been very effective in our testing. And then after this introduction, they sit down and have dinner. And when they're done with dinner, it's time for the first dance. So now we're almost at 8 o'clock at night, by the way. They do the first dance. John had the chance to hear that. And then we simulated kind of the last dance that we do outside, which generally speaking is the loudest part of it. And that was, that in general is just this one smaller Bose. These are all Bose speakers, so they're very high quality. It's a speaker that's just right targeted down on the dance floor. It's hanging from the tree. All the other speakers are off at this point. So we went from 2 big speakers down to one small one focused on the dance floor. And all those things were, let me take a look at my notes here. Those were all, it's kind of funny. Some of those were actually between 42 and 49. So we have 3 spots we take the readings, kind of the Porteous side of the business. And by the way, John didn't mention it, but I will mention it. We also have added to our staff called an event attendant. His purpose is to make sure cars are parked correctly, and to kind of add security to the events, which they don't really need a lot of security, but you still have to manage them. And then we actually take readings probably 5 to 6 times a night. We've been doing it all summer, by the way. And we have 3 spots we take it from, kind of the right side of the property, the middle, and the left side towards Bolinas Road. And yes, so when we discover that, one of the DJs decided that they wanted to crank up the music a little bit, within minutes we've had them turn it down. And that's how we monitor it. I mean, we literally have a full-time person monitoring the music. So I think we had a pretty good summer. I said I would be there for every wedding, and I have been. But I think things will actually even improve in 2016 because we are writing the new contracts. We're managing the events better. Barbara, you had mentioned, I mentioned to you last time that the indoors, when we move the music indoors, well, you still could have the same problem just because it's not outdoors. And I've fully paid for some of the new drapes that we're going to be hanging on the windows, and those are going to be installed, I don't know, within a month or so. So that will help. These efforts, even after tonight, will be ongoing. There's a lot of things I plan on doing to add privacy and more, let's say, mitigation on my own to the neighbors. And so privacy, mitigation of sound. It was interesting. We took a reading when John was there on our side of the fence, and it was 3 decibels lower than on the other side of the fence, just by simply sticking the thing on the other side of the property. So it's very interesting. I deal with it, on a weekly basis, probably more in the last 3 years than ever before. So I think a lot of goods come from this. I appreciate, I might have griped a little bit, and sometimes I feel like I have a right to, but at the same time, I think in the long run, we've added a state-of-the-art sound system to Deer Park Villa, and we've come up with better management techniques, better strategies to be good neighbors, and I think I'm very happy with the result, and I hope you guys are too. So any questions at this point?
Renee, thanks, Mike. Thanks for all your efforts to date. So Renee, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, and I want to thank you properly when we go through this at the end, but I just had a specific question. And that is, what is the plan at this point when you do have, as I know you've booked a lot of things, previously, for the people who don't want to use the in-house DJ and who are bringing their own, how do you guys have some training or protocols, or? And I'm sure it's complicated.
Well, the plan has been all summer, because we haven't had this all summer, by the way, and I think that we've mitigated it as well as we could, and really well, actually, by proper managing techniques, just by, number one, turn the volume down. That's a good start right there. And having our decibel readers and just right on it the whole time, the entire evening, a dedicated person taking that. We have, I want to say that we have maybe only eight, I should say, really, events that will have outdoor music between now and the end of the year. And which is, because I actually stopped booking weddings at one point because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So there's not a whole lot of activity left to happen. And, I thought it was noteworthy at the last meeting that I attended, or that we all were talking about this, that some of the neighbors that were complaining, when asked how things were going, said, I don't know, Mike hasn't told me when the events are. So I think that's should be remembered, be rather noteworthy, that's a sign of us doing a pretty good job. And we'll continue to do that. At the same time, we have to be in business. The good news, once again, and I'll say this to David specifically, because we had a conversation when I decided to close up at one point, that basically in essence, we've hired 100 new people to be employed at the Deer Park Villa by the fact that we're going forward. And I think that's a real positive for the community. So we're really appreciative of all the collaboration we've done with the council, with the neighbors, and with our company itself. And we're ready to go forward and, I think create a new standard for what people can expect moving forward. So thank you. Any more questions? I can come back and address more.
Great. Okay. Oh, I think Peter's got a question. Thanks, John.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Mike, I had heard that you were planning on selling Deer Park Villa. Is that the case? Or
Well,
do you have it?
I'll try to be nice
marketing?
about this. I don't think it's relevant, but number two, the truthful answer is it's not for sale. And, there's an old adage of saying everything's for sale, everything's got a price. But quite frankly, it's the 100-year anniversary of Deer Park Villa next year. 1916, it opened up as a lodge. And in 2016, it's still open to the public as well. And I have no intention of selling Deer Park Villa. And in fact, the fourth generation in their mid-20s is ready to keep Deer Park going for at least another 50 years.
Okay, so you don't have it listed for sale?
Oh, it might be listed, but it's not for sale. There's a difference.
What's the difference if you usually...
The difference is that, like I said, the difference is that all options were on the table at one point, and now they're not. So I quite frankly don't know if it's listed or not. In my estimation, it's not listed because I don't plan on selling it. So that's, really, I don't sell things, I just try to keep them. And the family's been there since 37, and I don't think any of the predecessors, my aunt, my uncle, my late father, my late grandparents, would think too highly of me if my intention was to sell Deer Park Villa. So I have no intention of selling Deer Park Villa. I just said the fourth generation, my son Vinny, Alex, David, they all work in our company, and they're in their mid-20s. I can see Deer Park going to the fifth generation.
But it's still listed? Have you...
I don't even know, I'll be honest with you. I just try to say that to you. So I don't, the listing's over, how about that?
Well, I'm just asking for clarification.
I just tried to clarify
it. Is it actively listed?
I think at this point, I would just
again,
say it's not really relevant.
I'm trying to understand the relevancy, but here's the thing. I just told you that it was listed. I never really had an intention of selling it, but I have to have all my options on the table, okay? And so whether it's, I don't even know if it's listed or not. I work every day like it's not listed, I can tell you that. And I'm doing all this not to sell it. I'm doing all this to be a good neighbor, number one, because once, again, remember, we haven't broken the law. Let's remember that. But still, back to whether I'm selling it or not, the answer is it's not for sale.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. And,
Okay.
So we may have you back. And
Yeah, well, I would like to be back.
Yeah, and we're going to open it up
I'm gonna go
to
back
public.
here.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate your efforts today. So with that, we'll open it up to members of the public who want to speak or not.
Bob Stemple, Porteous. I was home during the testing, and it was interesting to hear what Mike reported because that it coincided very much with my experience. What I have to say is not a gripe, but positive news. There was a definite improvement. I mean, it was definitely a step in the right direction. Okay, so I'm not here to gripe. I wanted to say that I was surprised at the very beginning, for example, that the music started out way too loud. I've got little notes here. 4:15, too loud. 4:25, too loud. And then 4:30, it's getting there. 5:05, very good, quiet. And so now I understand why it was so loud. They were trying the old system. I also talked to a neighbor who isn't here and was one of the few neighbors who was actually home between 4 and 5:30, 6 o'clock when the sound test was going on. This is the one that lives in Frühstück up in the hills. She didn't hear anything. So something is definitely working with this, with the speakers that are specific to a particular area. Now, I did continually hear the testing for the I shouldn't say continually hear, but I heard the first song, I heard the last song, I heard the first song again. There was a pause, I heard the last song. My wife actually went inside. We were outside having a glass of wine and everything. She actually went inside, so it was enough for her to be disturbed by it, but not me. I was focusing on the fact that this is so much better than it was before. So I'm reporting good news. My concern, of course, is what's going to happen when there's a real wedding. This has already been expressed. My concern, of course, is also what happens if another DJ gets his hand on the equipment. I really like the idea of the zones, because one of the biggest pluses I'd like to report is that I virtually did not hear the speakers. By speaker, I mean the people who were speaking. I did hear that surge, and it sounded like somebody blasting into the speaker for a second, like one name. But it was very difficult for me to hear anything else. And one of the big pet peeves of us in the past couple of years is that the speakers, the people who are speaking, and it's not only when the wedding party is announced, but also when they tell everybody that it's time to go inside or sit down or cut the cake or this is the first song or whatnot. It goes on and on all night. But that was just off the charts, way too loud in comparison to the volume of music. I didn't hear any of it. Something's working. I don't know what it is. I wasn't there to see where the speakers were pointed or whatnot. If it's possible for somebody all the way in Frühstück to no longer hear music, and I'm still hearing it in my yard, I'm guessing that probably just a little bit of tweaking of the position or whatnot could probably eliminate the problem 100% for me too. So as Mike said, it's still a work in progress. Things are being shifted around. I think with a little bit more shifting, probably even more progress could be made. Still, the question is what happens with the DJ, what is going to be the regular policy, and that we cannot find out until, of course, the next 8 events take place, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Other speakers? If you could state your name and where you live, if you feel comfortable doing so.
Sure. My name is Stephen Wasserman, and I live at 1 Meadow Way. I'm not an immediate neighbor of Deer Park, but I guess I'm on kind of the other side of that. Within the last 2 years, I had a wedding there. I thought they did a great job with regard to the wedding. There was discussions at the time, not with Mike, but with Debbie, I think was the person who was running the wedding thing at the time, about noise, about the DJ, and about the sign, because we had our own. We didn't use their in-house one, though I think we may have gotten a list from them. I think everything went well. Can't say it's really great to be able to have such a facility in our community for all the other people that live there in Fairfax. Thanks.
Thank you. Other speakers? Rose?
I cannot believe that we've gotten to this point after all these years. I think it's wonderful. And I think that I applaud Mike for putting all this effort in. And as we've stated all along, when we've had these meetings, we were not trying to put Mike out of business. He has a very good business there, and I hope it'll proceed for many, many, many years. It's just that we are citizens and we'd like to enjoy the property too, which hopefully will happen now. The only thing I'd like to bring up is there, I don't know if Mike knows, the biggest problem, I think, are the voices. The music isn't as bad as that surge in voices of DJs and stuff. Is there a way to hook up the microphone that the DJ would use, or the people attending the wedding, to have that much lower than the music? I don't know. Does that make sense?
We can ask Mike that, but I can tell you just from attending weddings that typically, there are announcements, and that tends to be kind of a loud thing so everyone will hear, just from weddings I've attended in New York and elsewhere in the state. So I think we can ask Mike that, but I think that's fairly difficult, and it sounds like Mike is saying it's more initially when they announce the bride and groom, and then maybe the first dance. Now, I know Mr. Stemple said there was more, but we can ask Mike that. We can
Yeah,
call him.
I just am asking as a suggestion that it's something that can be looked at.
Okay, great.
And I was not home for the test, so I don't know how it could be heard how it was heard up in the Hill. But from hearing from everyone else, I'm impressed, and I do appreciate all the work that's been done, and I hope it continues. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose.
My name is Doug Martin, and my wife Amanda and I live at 48 Myrna, and I've had 2 Deer Park experiences while living here in Fairfax for the last 20 plus years. First was at 36 Porteous, where I lived in a house that is very close, I mean immediately adjacent to the property and to Mike's property. And the music did come through, we could hear it in the house. It's just one of those things. I bought the house knowing that that was the case. I moved next to a venue that I love. My dad used to do weddings there. It's just part of the community and fabric of this place. And then we needed a bigger house, and so we moved about a half a block away up to Myrna. And so we're on 48 Myrna now, which is still good earshot, not as close as we were before, but still close enough to where we have been able to hear the music in the summer since we've lived there about 18 years. And we like it. I can't believe I'm not sick of Proud Mary, Brick House, and Celebration, which and a few bar mitzvah songs that I've come to know and love. It's just it's just being in the neighborhood. And yeah, sometimes it's loud, but I just don't find it annoying. You know, we're kind of okay with it. We moved there knowing that that was what was going on. That's, you know, we just accept it as part of the neighborhood. When about 3 weeks ago, I did go up to visit Deer Park Villa, and I met with Mike and congratulated him on reopening and asked him to show me the speaker system, and he did. And I saw the speakers. They are not unlike the ones here, but about half that size. And he showed me the speaker locations. He showed me where it was down by the bar, the zones that were there. My wife and I were part of the mediation process. I can't talk about what we talked there, but we were a part of it. And I've seen Mike step up and really make the effort here by employing one of the most critically important and highly recommended interventions, which was to manage the speaker system down into something that was more focused and localized. And we really appreciate Mike's efforts. We love Deer Park Villa in its many iterations. Sometimes the food could be a little bit better, Mike, but we really, really like Deer Park Villa. In fact, we love it, and we were heartbroken when Mike closed for a little while there. But putting that aside, we all do need to live together, and I really appreciate the effort that Mike has put in to try to mitigate the sound so that we all can live there together. But we ask you guys to continue to support a business that's vital, that's interesting, that's a wonderful component of our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public? Mike, do you want to come up just one more time and maybe speak to the issue that Rose brought up?
I think one of the great results in yesterday's testing was actually the speech part of it. Once again, because they're not coming from 2 main speakers, we were literally able to shut off the speakers that were down by the bar, the speaker that was on the dance floor. It was just the speakers that were directly in the grove where people will be sitting down listening to speeches. And that was actually one of the tests where it didn't register because of that new arrangement. And that's, not all, some had, and plus Yeah, plus we learned that, you know, through the adjustments that we'll be making, even through after yesterday's test, which was literally the first one we could do, because setting up a DJ to come down and all that stuff, it's, you know, there's a whole thing to that. And quite frankly, we're still, you know, there was actually a couple little mechanical failures yesterday on some portions of the thing. It's spread out over half an acre, for God's sakes. So there's a lot to tweak. But quite frankly, Rose, to your point about the speeches, and we all know that there's a big difference between, you know, if Mother Teresa makes a speech versus Chris Farley makes a speech, you're going to get different things happening to the neighborhood. But despite that, with the focused surround sound, the speeches were one of the best things that were improved and controlled during yesterday's test. And so I was happy to report that. Any other questions?
Thanks, Mike. Questions? I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much, Mike, for really working to try to ameliorate things, and thank the community for really stepping forward. And also special thanks to John, who has been, you know, our boots on the ground, really coordinating with you and spending his personal time. So we really appreciate your efforts, and I think sounds to me like we have a positive result. We look forward to more positive results. And if you want to speak, you should have spoken earlier, but did you want to come up and speak now? Yeah, well, could you come up and speak, and then...
I might have to answer a question, but just one thing, since we're almost winding up. But number one, you know, as long as this has been over 3 years, I still appreciate the council. Some are different members, actually. I think that a positive result has happened, and I think that it will get better, even better, once we get into the next round of people. Like I said, I still got some to finish up, which I'll control as best I can with kind of the old way in some respects, in most cases. Like I told you, how many more events are left between now and the end of the year?
I think you said 8.
So keep that in mind, and I think you'll see a huge transformation starting with all the new business that we'll have in 2016. At the same time, between now and then, we'll manage the heck out of this and do our best for our neighbors and for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Okay. Why don't we just let her...
Thank you. I'm thrilled that the sound test went well. I feel, you know, comforted that it's being addressed in this way, and yet I still feel like thing would still go until and that there isn't really a working permit for these parties. Not that I'm trying to throw a monkey in the system, but it does feel uncertain as a neighbor, and as somebody in the neighborhood, really hearing the parties, I would love to know where we stand with that, and what is going to happen. How are the parties going to? Who is going to decide when they end? And you know, if we're going on a 1976 edition of the minutes, is that what we're working with, or are we working with something else, or what is it? And I mean, I feel it would be really nice for all of us to have closure on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Frank, did you want to speak on this matter?
Thank you, Mayor. Quickly, Frank Eager, 13 Meadow Way, and my history goes back with Deer Parkville back to the 60s. I used to run with my own family coming in from San Francisco for dinners and Sunday afternoon at Deer Park Villa. You know, as far as the issue of what kind of permits Deer Park Villa has, I sat there where you sat for years, and we went through the music issues with Deer Park Villa over and over and over again. At the time, they had all the permits necessary they needed to function as a restaurant with outdoor dining and outdoor music. We clamped down on the music outdoors, and then Fairfax was sued by the previous family members of Deer Park Villa, and they actually prevailed in court, and it kind of turned it back to the police department to kind of enforce it. The court said, sure, they could have outdoor music, and if there's an issue, then the police department can intervene and make some kind of a decision as to whether or not the music's too loud. But back in the day, they had all the permits they ever needed to conduct a restaurant, outdoor dining, and outdoor music. So, thank you.
Thank you, Frank. So why don't I bring it back to the council, John?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say this is what.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks. Yeah, I wanted to say thanks to you, Mike, for working positively together towards a positive solution. I mean, I think this is when what happens, I mean, some of these ideas for the sound system came out of the mediation. I am told, because I can't be told what specifically happened in the mediation. However, I did see emails from the sound consultant back and forth, and so I had that to go on. But I think this is what happens when people kind of figure out how they're going to get to the middle ground with something that works, and something works for the business, and try to tailor it so that it's okay with the neighborhood. And it's always an ongoing process, because every day is a new thing, and you get a new person on the volume control knob, and yeah, you could have somebody abusing the system, and then the system doesn't work. But in general, I think part of it is management of it, and getting the in-house DJs who are going there, and that having the contracts reflect them being the ones in control of the music. And that happens. This is what happens when people work together towards a positive solution. And I applaud people in the neighborhood for being patient. I applaud Mike for listening to the neighbors and trying to improve his business. And I think it's a great sound system, and it's going to help your business, and it's going to help the community, and so it's a win-win all the way around. I mean, it's not free, but investing in your business is a good thing because it helps your business, and in the end run, it's good. So thanks to everybody, and I appreciate being part of the solution too.
Yeah, so I mean, Mike, I am kind of blown away. I have to say, I was a doubter, and I really kind of have gone this way and that way, and I've tried to listen to everybody. And bottom line, I was really sad that Deer Park Villa wasn't open, and I'm thrilled that it is, and I'm thrilled that my council members have taught me that there is a way to do things by having faith in people's intention to do things and then seeing it through. And I appreciate it, and I appreciate even more the moment that Bob stood up and said that there was something positive, and I felt tears come to my eyes. And this has been really a very important lesson for me as a council member, and to see something done in such a Fairfax style. John, kudos beyond belief to your faith and perseverance and creativity in working with Mike this way. And I really want to address Allison, because I want to know, maybe from staff, maybe from a fellow council member, how do we bring some kind of clarity to the neighborhood? Given that we have something positive and a platform to stand on with some mutual trust and respect, to allow some clarity. I don't know how that's done. Do we sit down and say, okay, here's which one we're going to agree to follow? What do we do without, I certainly don't want to stir any kind of a coal here, because I'm thrilled with where we're at. But what do we do now? Whoever wants to answer.
I've got a suggestion. Is that I think that this is an evolving process, and we haven't worked out the bugs, and I think it would be premature to jump to trying to say, oh, well, what are all the we need to let the dust settle and figure out where we are, because I think it would be crazy to try to address those legitimate issues. I mean, basically, the only way to get clarity on that, I think, is what there was a motion to do last time that failed or something, to go to the Planning Commission to get them to say, okay, examine it and reopen it and look at all kinds of stuff, which is kind of a big can of worms, to be honest. And to open that at this point, when we're evolving to a place which seems to be helping, if not eliminating, the problem.
No, John,
Yeah.
and thank you. I appreciate your response, and I'm not looking at that as the next step at all. I was really hoping that this wasn't going to have to go that way.
Yeah.
But I think Mike may, tell me if you do or don't, have something that could answer what it is that Allison's raising, because I understand the feeling of going, well, wait a minute, what time are the events going to end, and things like that. They should know that. But this is maybe something that we all already know. Just, what do you think?
Well, basically, the answer is, and Frank was almost there when he was talking about it back when he was on the council back in the late 60s and, late 70s, mid 70s, and then early 80s. The aftermath of the court case, which I've mentioned this numerous times, was the 1981 noise ordinance. Zone B was created specifically for Deer Park Villa. And ever since then, we've followed those rules. So the answer for me is, as a business person, is, we need the flexibility. We don't want to change anything. We've addressed the major issue of the noise part of it, and we don't feel, we feel that law in 1981 was specifically addressed for Deer Park Villa. There's no one else in Zone B. And so even though I don't really plan on letting things go to 10 o'clock at night outdoors, which is what the Zone B allows for, I plan on bringing them in earlier. I just think we should leave well enough alone. We'll manage it properly. If the neighbors feel like there's something that's going on that's bugging them still, then we can address it. But for the most part, there'll be a considerable difference in the mitigation of the sound, and I don't think the focus should be, was the 1981 ordinance, is that how we're supposed to look at it? Which, by the way, is how it's been enforced since 1981. So I just think we should leave well enough alone. We addressed the major issues. We mitigated this throughout the process, and we've finally mitigated something that everyone thinks is going to work, and I guess have heard it, even the testing some people listened in on. And I think, going forward, the proof will be in our actions, not whether or not there's a debate over our use permit versus what was written afterwards to help clarify things. Because you got to remember, in the use permit, it doesn't even say how many decibels there are. Okay, so take your pick. That's what I'm saying. I think we'll be good neighbors, continue to be good neighbors, and my goal is for Deer Park Villa to go on for another 100 years, being a good neighbor and good for the community. Thank you.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, Peter.
Well, Mike, I appreciate that you have invested in a sound system to help ameliorate the sound impacts and escaping off the property. That's certainly very welcome, and I see this as a great start. I don't see anything really settled or finalized. However, things in the future, it all depends on how the system is actually used and the volume levels that are used and so forth. So it's a very much event to event situational response in terms of the equipment is there. It sounds like there's a good sound system that will be able to allow live events to happen in a good way and greatly ameliorating the impact on the neighbors. So that's very welcome. The use permit is still up in the air, and my reading of the record is that the original use permit back in 1976 is still the operative use permit. There's no evidence that there is something that superseded it. Anecdotal discussions to the contrary. And so my concern is either, going forward that I think this is the operative use permit. And so the business is vulnerable to being held to that. And we can leave things as they are for a little while and see how things go. There hasn't really been a real event with the new sound system in place, so maybe over the course of several months we'll see how it is in real, real wedding conditions and so forth. But we are somewhat kicking the can down the road on this, and I'm willing to do that for a little while and see how things play out. But for the record, this does appear to be the operative use permit. And at some point, I think it would be in the interest of everyone to revisit this so that Deer Park can have music perhaps later than 8:30 p.m. Right now, it's in kind of a gray area. It's as far as allowing the music, beyond 8:30 p.m. because the operative use permit appears to limit it to 8:30 p.m. So I think ultimately it will be in everyone's interest to revisit this. So like I said, it's a very positive beginning, but we haven't resolved this use permit issue. And it will behoove us to resolve it at some point, but I'm willing to continue it for a few months and see how this plays out.
I need to comment. A couple of things. I've already mentioned that we're on the old contracts, so the new speaker system kicks in after those. Secondly, this started off as a noise issue, and we've addressed that. Thirdly, if you want to be specific to the use permit in 1976, then we don't have any decibel levels that we have to abide by, because that's what it says, there's none. So in all fairness, considering this town has measured our business since 1981 by the rules of 1981, not by the use permit, by the way, but by the rules of 1981, in my estimation, that's where we want to just leave it, continue to be good neighbors, because, that's always a big can of worms when you open, like you mentioned, when you open those up. It's 8:30 versus no decibels. I mean, we're abiding by the law, and once again, everyone needs to remember, the community, everyone involved has to remember that literally in 45 years there's been one violation. There's 500 violations a weekend that happen in the downtown of Fairfax of some kind, okay? So I think, even though I'm very happy we've improved and want to keep improving our relationships with the community and our neighbors specifically, I think it's time to move forward and not address this 2 months from now or this or that. Wait till 2016 kicks in, and when we really get full use of the new speaker system and the way we manage our business, and I think you'll find that there's nothing else to be said. So I truly appreciate Bob taking note of our testing yesterday, Rose supporting us. But to bring up the use permit, it's a big can of worms. And I truly believe, and a lot of people believe, that the 1981 ordinance has is a direct result of our court victory. And so anyway, I'm glad that you want to not worry about it right now, but I don't want you to worry about it at all, quite frankly, because the issue started off as a noise issue, and then there came a debate about 1976. So we want to stay positive, we want to move forward, and we just want to put this behind us. And I promise Bob and Rose and the neighbors that we'll continue to do things that will improve Deer Park even beyond what we're talking about now.
Could you clarify one thing you said?
It's not for sale.
What's that?
It's not for sale.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
You said that you're not going to start using the new sound system until 2016?
Well, if I can get someone to use it, but no one has to use it because they didn't sign up for it, I'm going to work on getting people to do it. And I told you there's 8 events between now and the end of December that are outside. So, you know, it's a little hard to transition somebody who's had their heart set on whatever they had their heart set on, and for me to sit there and say, oh, by the way, you're going to plug into these redwood trees, and they're going to go, you know, it just throws people off.
That doesn't, it's a better sound system.
I know,
but
but when you tell a bride and groom that, you know what I'm saying? Or if I told you, you thought one thing, and I said, guess what? It's something different. It's just, believe me, it's just, first of all, that's not what they signed up for.
Did your contract specify that the specific sound system? I mean, that doesn't...
It doesn't specify that they have to use the sound system that we just purchased, I can tell you that.
So why not, is the new sound system not ready to use for your next event?
Well, like I said, there was two little things that seem to be fading out that we have to tweak, that the bananas at large is coming out to tweak. But the bottom line is, Peter, that everything's in motion. Everything I said I was going to do, I did, or we did, I should say, the company did. We had a lot of support, a lot of people involved. The council, John did a great effort to come out and check things out. All the mediation the neighbors put in. And so, you know, I have no reason not to continue to do the best as we can. And I think we did a nice job this summer on the weddings, and we'll finish out nicely as well. In the meantime, knowing full well that, you know, that sound system will be implemented. But I'm not sure if you ever...
Why not start using it now at your next event so that the neighbors can have the benefit of this, mitigated sound?
Yeah, well, the neighbors have the benefit of knowing that it's coming, and that we've done a good job this summer as well. I think most of them could attest to that. And
is there a reason why you can't use the system now?
I think I just stated the reason.
Which is, I didn't hear it.
Oh, you didn't? Well,
why
let me say it again so you can understand it. That's not the agreement I have with the people who contracted out the weddings or the parties. I can't just change it on the fly. Okay, if they want to, I'll be happy to convert them to the system. And I've, talked to some people about that, but I'm not going to make any promises because they don't have to do it. And it's not a law. No, once again, Peter, remember, we haven't broken the law.
Mike, with all due respect, that doesn't make sense.
With all due respect?
That you can't have an event use the new improved sound system. I'm just trying to understand, is there a technical reason why you
think there's,
why you can't
let me
do
just,
well, number one, I'm glad you mentioned
let me just
the
break this off. I think
Yeah.
there's a couple of things. What you've said, Mike, that I understand is that you have contracts with people that have been in place, and based on those contracts, you can't force them to use the new system, but what I heard earlier is that you want to encourage them to use the new system, but if they choose not to, you're not going to break the contract over that.
By the way,
is that correct?
That is, but one last real quick point, and then I'm going to go back there, I think, and that is the fact that there is some technicalities to running this system. that's one of the reasons why we're going to have a specific DJ going forward, is because try to explain the system to 100 different DJs. These guys are coming out. They practiced yesterday. We have more meetings to come out and practice again. So you have to kind of dial it in. It's not a plug and go system. It's a system you need to understand how to use. So I'm not going to be experimenting with someone's wedding during their ceremony and their reception and this whole thing when the DJ who's coming in has never even seen this equipment or tested it themselves. That's why we're specifically having the DJ come in. I hope you understand that. So,
I think
you do understand that, right?
Well, I'm disappointed that, for several months you're talking about getting this system and putting it in place, and now hearing that it's not really going to be implemented until next year. And to my understanding of sound systems, and I'm a musician and I have used sound systems of different types, it's not that difficult a thing to transition to the new sound system. So I'm disappointed to hear that. That's unfortunate. There's going to be an even longer delay in actually using this sound system.
I think John can speak to this, and then we can kind of wrap this up.
And Peter,
Mike, we might need you.
Yeah.
Or
maybe
sit down.
Not. Who knows? There's a couple of facets to it. I mean, one of them is the contract specifies that the people with the wedding hire a DJ, and the DJ comes and they bring their equipment, and it's the equipment that they're used to. However, I'm also a musician. We play together, but it's more for the benefit of the audience. And frankly, having seen this system, it's different than the system. It's not a PA in the way that, basically it has a DJ board that has some settings, then it has the power amp thing that runs into, and that seems like it makes sense, and then it has a microphone setup, and there's levels set on all three of those, and they interact with each other, and they kind of have to dial them in with each other. And I can understand why a DJ wouldn't want to go in and be in the hot seat and have to deal with uncertain equipment like that. I mean, maybe some would be able to and some wouldn't, So I think it's legitimate. I mean, I would hope that some would try, maybe they can be encouraged to show up the day before and give it a run through so they get familiar enough with it. I mean, that might be enough to entice them. Hey, I get to use this new, really cool, because it's a pretty good system. And, that might be enough to encourage them. And Mike, if you're listening to that might be a good strategy to offer the DJs that are working, outside DJs from this year to say, well, feel free to come by for an hour the day before or something like that, just to familiarize yourself with the system. That might be a possibility to encourage them to do that.
So bringing it back, I think we're hearing a lot of positive things. I'm usually one who likes to cross the T's and dot the I's, but I'm in agreement that at this point, this is evolutionary. John's been working with Mike. I think Mike is really making great strides and to move forward in a positive manner. So I personally do not feel a need to send something to the Planning Commission now or in 2 months. I think we should really, I know through the end of the year we may have some hiccups with people using the old system or using their own system, but it sounds like in 2016 we're going to continue to hear good things. So I don't know what we need, Garrett. I don't see a motion specific here. Do we need a...
No, it sounds like, if I understand from the discussion, it sounds like you would monitor to see how things are going, and then perhaps it sounds like you would want maybe a report in 2016 when the system has been used
fully
operational, so then you could have somewhat of a status report It sounded like that's what the council direction was.
I think the majority of the council is sort of leaning in that direction. So I don't think we need more. I don't think we need a specific motion.
Do we need a motion to continue it to a date certain?
No, I think staff, we would just put it back on the agenda sometime in 2016. But per your policy, any council member could put this item back on the agenda anytime.
Okay.
I actually think that it might be important to mark this as the first time in the 2.5 years I've been sitting here that we're not continuing this item.
I'm all for that. I would move not
I
to
just think
continue
that's
it.
we need to mark time
Sure.
sometimes.
How about this? If you were to make a motion, I would suggest you just make a motion that you've addressed the petition and that in 2016 you'd like to revisit the effectiveness of the sound system.
Okay, so does someone want to make that motion? John?
I will move exactly that we have responded to the petition, and we will revisit this at mid-2016 to just to see how it's going.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay, abstain. All right. So we've got 4 ayes and Councilmember Lax abstain. Okay, thank you, everyone. So we're moving on to discuss, consider resident complaints regarding truck noise at Good Earth. Town manager.
What noise?
Sure. At your August 5th council meeting, the council at that time considered comments from the owners of the Good Earth and a resident, Mr. Franks, regarding noise caused by trucks at the Good Earth. So after your discussion on August 5th, the council indicated to staff that it'd like to agendize this topic again for this meeting, specifically this date in September, and that time kind of get the staff report on the activities to date. As part of the council direction on August 5th, you asked us to see if we could monitor more of the truck activity at the Good Earth. Actually, what we did was we requested police officers, time permitting, to log their observations. What we attached to the staff report were 12 police reports, really observations between 5:30 and 6:30 in the morning. Period range from August 7th to August 26th. During that time, I think from the reports you can indicate there was 1 violation on August 7th. Now, since the staff report, I actually have 2 more police reports for August 28th and August 31st, which would mean we had 14 police reports. There are no violations on those days. Unless you consider a delivery van a truck, then there could be considered, something could be considered a violation. So what we've done is I actually talked to the Good Earth, and they indicate that they apologize they weren't able to come this evening due to a conflict. They're actually aware of the violation on August 7th. They indicated a vendor that normally delivers on Friday afternoons delivered that morning. They've since talked to that vendor. They indicate there was another violation. There's another truck, I think it was a typical truck that normally arrives, and they've talked to the company again regarding that. And actually, they self-reported themselves today, indicated there was a violation. And what they've done is they, again, have spoken to the truck companies. So oddly, what they're going to implement is, obviously, Good Earth doesn't want to be fined, nor do they want me to fine them. But what they're going to do is they're going to be implementing their own fining system for the trucks that violate delivery protocols as they set up. So that's what they're going to be implementing. So to be consistent with that, I think as staff will probably take a look at doing the same thing where we might issue fines to the Good Earth, and we'll see how that works. But I do not have in any of the police logs any log complaints related to noise. Doesn't mean that there weren't any, but it means that no one specifically called them in. And so at this point, I think that pretty much summarizes the staff report. I know Mr. Franks is here. With that, are there any questions?
Just one question. I noticed on August 10th, it looked like there were 3 trucks that delivered between 6 and 7, and their permit allows 2 trucks between 6 and 7. Did you find out if that was the case or if it was my misreading?
Well, no, that's what the report says, but I don't believe the permit addresses the issue if the truck that arrives before 6 stays past 7, because it's still unloading, say it arrived at 5:55, I don't believe that's a violation.
So we think that's why there were 3 there, because one was...
Right, because it was after 6 o'clock, so if one truck's still there and 2 new ones come,
Okay.
then that's in compliance.
Okay.
But you got to remember, the police reports are all just the point in time. The officers aren't standing there waiting. They're just observing it at a point in time.
Okay, thank you. So with that, any council members have any questions? Let's open it up to public comment. I think Mr. Franks, you'd like to speak?
My name is Stephen Franks, 19 Willow Avenue, and let's see. It's very positive, what I have to say. I'm really not worried too much about the amount of trucks, as I say. It's the amount of noise. There's such rules in the use permit. Size of trucks, 2 40-foot trucks between 6 and 7 a.m. It doesn't make any difference. That's not really been followed at all. 60-foot trucks are fine. It's the noise. I would just like to say a couple things for the record. I would ask the council to refer to the supplemental staff report on August 5th, the attachments number 4, page 3, item number 3. It's a community agreement. And this focuses on the sound wall, and it's pretty specific after I've read it several times about a sound wall being built, and this became a fence. It also states about an acoustic noise absorbers, which there've never been any noise absorbers whatsoever other than a vine. I feel that in the reference to Mr. Balak's letter of instituting a noise-free hour between 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. every day of the week, that is absolutely impossible. It cannot be done with a truck that large and all the weight that's been pulled out of that truck. This should read, in his letter, it should read, we will do our best to reduce the noise and will focus on the 3 main problems with the noise, which are the backup beepers, air brakes, and unloading of the trucks. No air brake noise allowed is not working. Although efforts are being made by Good Earth, the dropping of the 5 a.m. truck loading gate is also an ongoing problem, and this is not going to be resolved. It's not a noise-free zone. It's you can't make it. It's just impossible. You can reduce the noise as much as possible, and they have done a good job with the backup beepers. Has been fantastic. There has been hardly any backup beepers, very few. My main goal is and always has been for Good Earth to follow the use permit rules, community agreement, and their own personal words, verbal and in writing, that they have promised our community. Long-term solution is well needed instead of a short-term solution. And after 3.5 years, we are on a long-term solution. You know, we're long-term already. So that's pretty much all I have to say, really. It's been very positive. As far as noise complaints from me personally, it's just about impossible because that air brake goes off. You can't call the police up at 5 o'clock in the morning and have them come down after the fact. You know, the noise, the backup gate slammed down. There's no decibel readings have ever been made to find out what that noise is. And I can tell you Monday morning it was incredibly large, which would far surpass any kind of noise decibel reading coming off their property line. And as well as this morning, 5 a.m., I've been woken up again with a lift gate slamming down on the back and can hear all the pallets being pulled off the back of that truck at 5 a.m. So that's basically it. You know, for Mr. Balak to say that there is it's not going to be any noise at all, it's just a ridiculous statement to put in writing and promise anybody because he's at home, he's not around, both owners. So that's about all I have to say to that.
Thank you. Garrett, when you mentioned that they were going to be, I was reading their protocol for the 5 a.m. receiver roll, and what I see is make sure no beeps are used, no air brake noise is allowed. It does say something that there are 2 sets of brakes, and trailer brakes are not required to be set if the trailer's on level ground, and the tractor air brake should be minimized greatly. So it sounds like they may need to do that, and it may have a little bit of noise, at least my reading of it. But when they say they're going to be implementing fines against truck drivers, is that for noise issues or arriving at the wrong time, or all of the above?
I don't know about the noise, but it'd be arriving at the wrong time.
Okay, so since the issue that Mr. Franks has brought before us is more about doing things, I mean, so we have in our packet this protocol for 5 a.m. receiver roll. I guess one of the things to confirm with Mr. Baylock is he intending to also fine people for making noise that isn't consistent with this protocol?
I can ask him. It would seem difficult to me unless someone was really egregious about it, like new drivers and stuff aren't going to know. But I'll ask the question.
Okay.
Well, one of the things we discussed, and I recall him bringing up, which was very interesting, was that although it would be a worker inside the building, that they were tasking an individual to be responsible. Well, it would seem to me that there, and you would know this, so chime in here, that there's going to be a time frame between the moment when the truck arrives and the truck stops and the truck unloads. How difficult would it be to have that assigned individual leave the good earth, come out on the loading dock, a space of not very far, and ensure that the noise is captured before it occurs? And you can ask Ms. Baylock to actually go in that direction.
I think that's what he's trying to implement when he adjusted it by saying before he had one person and anybody else there would not let the person know if the truck arrived. So as Mr. Franks would point out in the past, perhaps the person was inside, didn't hear the truck, never knew it was there. And so he's trying to implement things so other workers inform the person to get out there and do what they need to do. But that being said, I will pass along the comments.
Zone protocol says remain with the driver until she pulls away from the dock, help facilitate the unloading without making any noise, no idling, no noise from roll-up doors, no compressors left running, no radios, no loud voices allowed, and no noise from placing of empty. I mean, there's all kinds of things on this list, so it'd be good to clarify if he intends to.
It also states on that list that the receiving clerk will do a report every day, every morning on those deliveries, and specifically on the noise. On his letter, I have it here, and Vic, I can read it to you briefly if you'd like to. But it's that, I don't know how many reports have been made on the noise, but it's of the air brakes and so forth, but it is ongoing.
Okay, so if I was to sum it up from your perspective, it would seem good progress made.
Yes.
But Garrett should speak with Al about buttoning down on some of the fine print that was agreed to.
Yeah, and again, which is very confusing to say up here, because I'm going to throw this at you. It's the noise and not the amount of trucks that I'm interested. I don't care if there's a small van, and nobody cares if there's a small van in there between 6 and 7, delivering bread, delivering something. As long as there's no noise coming from that, I don't care. I said it before. If there's 5 vehicles over the use permit, as long as the noise is kept down. I mean, it kind of throws a wrench into it because I'm saying give them more. At the same time, I haven't been too happy to fight this thing for 3.5 years. Keep the noise down. Have more trucks.
Well, I think, Mr. Franks, just excuse me, this started when I was on the Planning Commission, when Good Earth came in to increase the number of trucks.
Right.
And so what I think, more trucks is going to lead to more potential noise issues. So I think at this point, I don't think we're revisiting that, and that would go to the Planning Commission if that were to be the case. But I think if we can button up. I think because of where you live and your bedroom window, you will probably always hear some noise, but to the extent we can button this up and, you know.
I'm perfectly clear on where I live and the noise that
I
has
know.
transpired from where I live and the trucks driving by and so forth, but I'm specifically referring to the noise that's coming from that loading dock.
So I think if we can, Garrett, if you can follow up with Al and get more clarification on what he intends to fine these drivers for. Is he for not following his protocol? And I would suggest that rather than putting this on the agenda for next month, that we wait a few months.
That sounds good to me. I could use a little break.
Okay. So maybe we wait for a few months and before we bring this back, and maybe someone could contact Mr. Franks in a couple of months and see if we can wait even longer.
Thank you.
But I would like it through your town manager report next month if you can report on your discussions with Al.
Sure, that's not a problem.
David, does that work for you?
I was just sitting here musing on the end of the great noise debates in Fairfax.
It's not done yet, but thank you, Mr. Franks, for coming and again being so patient and trying to work through these issues. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor,
Yes.
can we take like a 5-minute break?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. 5 minutes. Okay, so we will take up our next item, which is adoption of a resolution declaring the existence of a local emergency at Meadowway Bridge and authorizing the emergency procurement of materials and labor without competitive bidding. Garrett, would you like to give the report?
Sure. So maybe as a little background, in October 2014, Caltrans did their biannual every 2 years inspection of the bridges in Fairfax. And what they do, which we didn't know at the time, but we know now as a matter of practice, for bridges they deem to be perhaps at risk, older timber bridges, they come back and do a subsequent inspection. So they did this in July 2015. At that time, they discovered that there were some serious issues with the Meadowway Bridge, and they actually called us up. They called staff and they called our consulting engineer, CIC, to report that, hey, here's some serious things you're going to need to address, and heads up, at some point you'll receive the bridge inspection report, revised one, and we have received that in August. So really, what's at issue, Caltrans is indicating to us that we need to repair, in essence, a column that holds the bridge up, and then add additional support under a beam that holds the girders that holds the deck of the bridge. What Caltrans has done is they've indicated you have 6 months to make the repair. If we don't make the repair in 6 months, then Caltrans has indicated that they will have to declare the bridge inoperable and close it. Obviously, that would be a major problem if we had to close the bridge. Caltrans gave us 6 months because they knew that we have to get a permit from the Department of Fish and Wildlife in order to work in the creek on a bridge. It normally takes a while. We actually anticipate what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to be recommending, if you take this action, that we're going to go ahead and do the work for the bridge without waiting to get the final approval of the permit. And the reason for that is you're only allowed to work in creeks between mid-April roughly, and mid-October. You can't work in the creeks outside that time frame. So it's very important we get all the work done by mid-October. So it's permissible to do emergency work and submit for the application at the same time. And so that's what we're going to do, assuming that we adopt this resolution this evening. Some of the other things is pretty much the work is pretty straightforward. Take upwards of maybe 7 days. We'll work underneath the bridge. There won't be any impact to traffic. And I think the other thing is in terms of trying to make this work happen sooner rather than later, town actually needs to make some findings to declare a local emergency related to the bridge. This will actually do a couple of things. It'll allow us to not have to follow the public bidding requirements, which if we had to, there's no way we get this done in October. And a subset of that is the work's going to cost more than $15,000, and I only have authority to approve up to $15,000. So specifically, the findings you'll be making is that the bridge is the only access route to the neighborhood. Obviously, the closure of the bridge would cause a perilous situation for emergency vehicles that need to access the neighborhood. The other thing, police and fire indicate that they really need to keep Meadowway Bridge as an access point to their neighborhood. Our consulting engineer indicates that the situation could deteriorate more depending on the weather and conditions. If it's especially rainy season, that could make things worse. Obviously, closure would mean no delivery vehicles or service vehicles like garbage trucks or postal service would be allowed into that neighborhood. If the bridge is closed, that could be obviously a serious problem. In addition, all the residents would need to park on the other side of the bridge in the other neighborhoods, impacting the Cascade neighborhood. And again, as I had mentioned, following that regular bidding process, there's no way we get it done by mid-October. So this will allow us to go ahead and go ahead and issue the work. In terms of the work, we think the total cost of design and construction is about $40,000, give or take. We'll have a better idea. We're working with one firm. We think it's going to be under 20. We actually think design now will be under 20. And so that's kind of where we're at. I think one point of clarification is the 6-month period for Caltrans, that would be February. If we had to wait till April to do the work, then obviously you could have a situation where the bridge is closed 2-3 months. It's definitely important that we do not allow the closure of the bridge, and thus we have this resolution declaring an emergency to allow the town manager to do everything necessary and appropriate to make the repairs of the bridge. Additionally, one of the actions here on the agenda too is we're going to appropriate $40,000 from general fund reserves to pay for this Meadowway Bridge improvement, and that's not reimbursable under the state highway bridge program either, because repairs just aren't eligible. With that, that concludes the staff report. Available for any questions.
Any questions of Garrett?
Yes. As Mark Lockerbie, does he concur with the recommendations of Caltrans and their concerns?
Yes, the staff, building official, and our consulting engineer, and our other public works engineer, Wayne Bush, that we use from time to time, all concur on the necessity for the repair.
Thank you. With that, I'll open up to public comment. Oh, Renee, I'm sorry. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I just thought of this. Could you remind me, Janet, what the distance from a project in terms of a recusal? I live around the corner on Cascade Drive. I just thought of that.
Sorry, I should have checked that ahead of time. I apologize.
But I'm not 500 feet.
Are you 500 feet?
I'm more than 500 feet. Okay. That was my question. How many feet? Okay. Thank you.
I'm further away than Renee, so if she's outside the zone, I'm outside the zone too.
Okay, with that, I'll open up to public comment. Okay, no public comment, bringing it back to the council. Could I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution declaring the existence of a local emergency at Meadowway Bridge and authorizing emergency procurement of materials and labor without competitive bidding, and to appropriate $40,000 from general fund reserves to Meadowway Bridge from Fund 51-856.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the motion passes. Moving on to the next item. This is the discuss Caltrans determinations regarding the Meadowway Bridge and approve contract amendment number 4 with the California Infrastructure Consultancy for the environmental and design phase of the Meadowway Bridge. Garrett, would you like to give the report?
Sure. What I'd like to do is provide perhaps a little more background that's what's in the staff report, just to maybe touch on why we even started this project in the first place. Pretty much with the state, they have highway bridge program. I think we have maybe 6 bridges in town that are eligible. We really saw as an opportunity to get some money to help repair, and in this case it's a replacement, but we saw as repair and maintain some of the bridges in town. In this case, this project's projected to cost somewhere between 3.3, 3.5 million. Out of pocket of the town, it only cost us about $150,000. But more importantly, one of the reasons that we did the bridge program is because of how the funding works. What we found is the state, in essence, there's 14,000 bridges that are eligible for this program in California. It looks like to me about 750 of those bridges have some type of funding commitment for whatever phase they're in the project. The state allocates $300 million a year for bridge repairs. According to the workshop that the consultant and I attended, the bridge staff indicates 3 years out, they will be $600 million short of what's being requested for bridges. So what that means is it's very important that you get in the pipeline, get that commitment, because otherwise you're going to wait a while to get that priority. And I think from staff and with the council, while we understand the sensitivity related to the bridges, we also thought it was good policy to get out ahead of the curve. I think we're trying to be proactive, because 5-10 years from now, if something were to happen, then people would come to you and say, fix my bridge. And we'd say, well, we have to apply because we don't have any money. And so what you're doing is you're kind of advanced planning, because a bridge project, according to the Caltrans staff, interesting enough, it takes 4 years at the fastest to complete a bridge project. And they said, that's very rare. We started in 2013. If we're lucky, we begin construction in fiscal year 18-19, and that'll probably take a year or two, it's hard to say, 18 months or so to complete. So you're talking it's a long way out, lots more time, but if you were to add delays into that related to not having the funding, because it's based on priority, if you're ready to go, you get the funding, we're kind of in that pipeline, you could be another 4 or 5 years out. So that's just one point I just wanted to make. But basically, this contract, you awarded it to CIC, California Infrastructure Consultancy, back in, I think, October 2013. And at that time, it's for the 5 bridges, including Creek, Meadow Way, Spruce, Marin, and Canyon. Spruce, Marin, and Canyon are considered what we call bridge preventive maintenance program bridges, more maintenance related, and that's within the program. At that time in the contract, you really approved funding for the first phase, and initially it was just for the other bridges except Meadow Way. We had to address more issues related to neighborhood to get their comfort level and what we were trying to do, and then the council subsequently, in amendment number 1, added the money that we received from Caltrans for phase 1 work for Meadow Way Bridge. Amendment 2 was just a little money for additional work, and then actually in September of last year, the council actually improved by $737,000 the contract with CIC for the work for Creek, Spruce, Marin, and Canyon, and that's to get it to construction award. So what this would do, Amendment 4 that's being proposed, is to do the same thing for Meadow Way Bridge, get it to construction award. But before we even talk about that, we put on here what we've been doing the last 18 months in discussions with Caltrans, both at headquarters and the local office. We knew from the workshop that we had lots of issues that we had to answer for the neighborhood. And they were all very good questions. We just didn't have the answers. And so what we've done is we worked with Caltrans, and this is what they've said. They said, 1, the bridge must be replaced. They will not pay for repair, even though we had our consultant kind of take a look at what kind of structure would it be if you were to try to just repair what's there. It'd be this exoskeleton, but in essence, you wouldn't be really seeing the bridge, nor would you be driving on the bridge. You'd be driving something else. But that's not even eligible. Caltrans said, no, has to be replaced. And they indicated because it doesn't mean it's functionally obsolete, so it needs to be replaced. But they did agree that the replacement bridge, one option to be considered is that it can be made of timber. Initially, Caltrans staff turned down our requests, and in essence, we had to appeal to the Federal Highway Administration that provides the funding, and indicated, yes, timber is a possibility, and it's eligible for funding. The next thing that Caltrans agreed to is that the replacement bridge could be 1 lane. Originally, they said, no, it needs to be more. Neighborhood's concern, and we said, no, we believe it can be 1 lane. Caltrans agreed. They agreed it could make 1 lane, but it needs to meet minimum width requirement. This case, existing bridge is 14 feet, including the rails. New bridge would be 21 feet, including the rails. And then lastly, they actually authorized funding for this phase. we actually had to argue with them of the level of funding because they were saying it's way too much proportionally given the cost of the replacement. And we indicate, no, you don't understand. This is Fairfax. We have a level of understanding with the community where we need to build in money for public outreach and communication. And we may have to do a few more studies just so everyone's comfortable about how the process works. So I think we've gotten major concessions from Caltrans to move forward at this point. And what we've done in the staff report, we've attached the letter that we sent out to the neighborhood. All the reports are online. We've indicated that. And so where we're at is Amendment 4. The first step it actually allows us to finish some of the different studies and reports like the survey that we started, but we ran out of money. So allow us to do that. And more importantly, it actually allows us to conduct another workshop with the neighborhood to be scheduled in the fall. And the key thing to that workshop is Caltrans has indicated they will attend because we said you need to be able to answer people's questions. And they all ask hard questions, the same as we did, but you need to be able to answer them and tell them why. And they said, fine, didn't have a problem with that. And so we think that'd be a great opportunity for the residents to ask Caltrans those questions. We also plan to have a component to maybe talk about some of the conceptual features of a new bridge, like what type of materials, what are some of the key things. So it's important to note that while this amendment is for, I believe we're adding $770,000 to the contract just for Meadow Way, and that includes environmental and design and some work for CEQA that's not covered, but also point out that that's for the entire contract and the scope of work, but the next step is the workshop and finishing the studies and maybe some preliminary things so we have people be able to comment on design, but we're not moving much more beyond that. And the project slated construction wouldn't begin at the earliest till 18-19, so there'll be plenty of opportunity for the public to comment along the way. The council is going to have to make key decisions on this moving forward. So it's not like anything's a done deal other than we're recommending that really that the bridge be replaced. So with that, I think I indicated what the additional costs, $770,000 will be added to the contract for phase 2 for Meadow Way Bridge. Should be pointed out that roughly the matching requirement for the town is about $115,000. So out of the $770,000, we're responsible for $115,000. And you should note that when the bridge goes to construction, there is no cost to the town. So at the end of the day, I think I had indicated that in terms of leveraging, if the project ends up costing a total of $3.5 million, the town will have paid about $150,000. And that's really the driving factor for why staff even pursued this in the first place, because it just made sense from the town perspective. So with that, concludes the staff report. More than happy to answer any questions.
Not directly related, but what's the last bridge that was replaced in Fairfax? Was that the last one?
Yes, that was the last replacement.
So since Nodder wasn't at the mic, that's Nodder Town May. He's our consulting engineer with CIC.
Okay.
And he indicated for the record that Canyon Road was replaced. And obviously we have money in there to do some repair and maintenance.
Okay, and was there an outreach, public outreach,
For Canyon,
For
you mean
Canyon.
for the replacement of Canyon?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Was that budgeted into
I wasn't
the
here.
process? And what?
Yep. I'm not sure if there was anything done. Some of the residents might know actually better. But that was done in, I think it was early to mid-90s. So not sure if there was any public outreach done then for Canyon.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a sense, as having not gone through this before, what generally is the protocol and the procedure when you are replacing a bridge and piecing it together.
I think Caltrans has an expectation you would get community input. I just don't know whether they would think you need to have X number of community workshops and so much preparation for the workshop.
I just want to add, first of all, I've dealt with Caltrans extensively. We rebuilt the Cypress structure with them when I was at the state, and they're usually not really great at public workshops. They may do one, but they're not as open as we might be. And I want to just say that thank you for appealing to the Federal Highway Administration to get the approval for the timber bridge and also pushing for a one-way bridge. So those are huge achievements. Caltrans is kind of a bureaucracy that's very difficult to work with, and also to get such a large amount of funding to be able to do some of the things that we want to do to make sure that the community is comfortable. But with that, any more questions of Garrett?
Well, I could just underline what you have just said. Actually, I'm dealing with being on the Transportation Authority. Yeah, we deal with Caltrans a lot, and it's unusual to get a touchy-feely response out of Caltrans. Just to put I mean, Fairfax, we kind of go the extra thing to make sure people are comfortable when we get public input. It takes time, takes energy. At the end of it all, it's a good thing. I mean, it helps our community, and I think your earlier thing, Renee, about how much public outreach there is, it's probably more on this bridge because it's a cool old bridge. It's wooden. People really care about it. I know people in that neighborhood who specifically chose to live in that neighborhood because they liked the bridge. I mean, it was one of the factors, but it was certainly one of the factors in their decision on where to live. That said, it's an old wooden bridge, and we're seeing with this emergency measure that we just did. I mean, it takes maintenance. In terms of specific questions, I don't know. How do we get this done?
I think we could probably open it up to the public. Oh, Peter?
Thank you. I haven't dealt with this issue since I've been here on the council. I was curious what the Federal Highway Administration concern was with a glue-lam beam. Was it just whether it would be strong enough, some kind of environmental concern?
Yeah, I think Caltrans actually was the one that didn't want it to be timber because they said it's a wood bridge. They said we're in a coastal zone. We expose it to the elements. It's not a good idea. And that's why we asked, hey, is there somebody higher up we can ask? And since you bring it up, I do need to thank Nodder Townmate because he was on it working with them the whole time. Caltrans getting them all the information they needed so that they could go ahead and ask the Federal Highway Administration why it's, because we argued the point. We said we weren't in a coastal zone by their definition.
Right, and also in terms of the design process, has a decision been made to definitely go with a wooden bridge, or does this contract contemplate wood, concrete, other types of bridge? I'm just kind of curious, what kind of commitment this contract is making, if at all, to any type of bridge?
Actually, the contract includes the alternatives, such as type of material. And actually how the process will work is the workshop's geared to get input from the community, but ultimately the bridge design and type, that's the council's decision. Because what we provide to people is ultimately we'll provide to the neighborhood and the council the overall life cycle costs of a bridge, which we provided for in the past. So you'll see wood bridge, here's what the maintenance will be, here's the overall costs, steel, concrete, and then you'll see that and you can compare, and then you'll have the input from the neighborhood, and then you can decide.
Will there be an additional phase after that process, and therefore an additional contract? Once we decide, let's say, to build a wooden glue-lam bridge, will the design of that be covered in this current phase of the contract that we're considering tonight?
Yes, actually the contract's design, environmental, and I'll take you from the options to the final design to a bid packet to bid award.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I'll open it up to public comment. Frank?
Yes, Mayor and council members, Frank Ager, 13 Meadow Way. And the Meadow Way Bridge project continues to move in the right direction, and I'm pleased with that. With the feds and the state now approving a 21.5-foot wide bridge, one lane for driving, and with a pedestrian bicycle lane, and wooden structure. So all of a sudden, it really is going in the right direction. A couple of remaining issues are the width and the location of the temporary bridge that's supposedly 19.5 feet, and the massive concrete walls on both sides of the creek, giving the appearance of a Corps of Engineers Creek type project at the Meadow Way Bridge on that big curve. The removal of the large buckeye, the California laurels, and one large oak on the east side of the bridge will really change the entrance of Meadow Way and change the appearance of the neighborhood pretty much forever. And there are times when engineering solutions must be tempered. I sit on a public agency board that has contracts with engineering consultants that come to about $4 million a year. And quite often, we've got to look at some reasonable alternatives, and the engineers, have kind of this engineering mind. They're going in one direction. It's got to be engineered sound. It's got to be this. It's got to be that. But at times, we have to temper the engineers with their solutions. Our town should look at one of the alternatives of a steel beam and wood alternative that could be dropped in place. And I've got just some examples. I've only got two copies of each, but I'll leave them with you. There are pre-constructed bridges that could be brought in, and you wouldn't need a temporary bridge. You'd have to shut down Meadow Way for a short period of time and put the proper foundations in, and then lay your pre-constructed bridge in there. The neighborhood has read all the materials, but we need to see it on paper. It's easy to read about it. It's going to be so wide, and it's going to be here, and it's going to be there. But town roads are not necessarily always on town property, and private residents have been known to be located on public rights-of-way. So just because the town was developed over the years, and sometimes the meets and bounds weren't correct. For instance, each side of Meadow Way, the north side and the south side, are different assessor parcel book blocks and pages. And no one ever reconciled the north and the south with the public right-of-way. If you look at the map, it says there's a 40-foot public right-of-way, but there is not a 40-foot wide public right-of-way on Meadow Way. Before the project becomes set in stone, we need to see it laid out on the block and really be able to understand how it's all going to fit, if it fits.
Frank, not to interrupt you, but I think
I'm done.
Part of the workshop would be to try to have depictions of the way it would look. So I think the workshop and also having Caltrans there would help, as far as more depictions. So it's better than just trying to read it.
So I'm talking about a set of drawings where we can actually
I think that's kind of the plan. Is that correct, Garrett?
I think Mr. Egger raises great points, and those are all the points we want brought to the workshop, because then the engineers could say, ooh, okay, yeah, we thought about, because in the RFP process, there were some firms that talked about, well, you could do this, you could drop a bridge in place, da-da-da-da. Nothing is ever as easy as it sounds. Vegetation is a concern. We know we will have to remove some, but that being said, there's an environmental process we need to go through. So all these comments are what we're going to take into the workshop. The workshop itself is more conceptual. It's like, well, this is what it can look like. We could talk more about how we think it's going to work.
So there won't be any graphics?
We'll have some. We'll have some, but it's not going to be. I just want to point out that it's not the final design.
No, we
It's not
understand
anything.
that,
Right.
but I think what Frank's pointing out is some visual depictions of. If we can have that, I think that'll help people kind of have their arms around this more and what's
We'll have that.
contemplated. Is that kind of what you were thinking, Frank?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's you can talk about it, but when you see it, then you can really understand how it's all going to fit, how it's going to work. When you see the relationship with the bridges and the individual homes that are along Meadow Way. Just a quick little bit on Canyon Road Bridge. So I was on the council when the big redwood went through that old wood bridge, a beautiful old wood bridge, and so we had to replace it. And what we did is we purchased a precast concrete bridge, basically. And I worked with neighbors further on up Cascade Drive. I got permission for the town to access through private parcels so we could have our police four-wheel drive rig cross the creek and patrol Canyon Road Bridge. We parked a fire engine, one of the Ross Valley fire engines, on the other side of the Canyon Road Bridge, so we had a fire engine right there. And that bridge was down for maybe, I'm thinking at the most 2 weeks. We worked out garbage collection, we worked it all out. And so that bridge was put up in like 2 weeks. That was the only inconvenience. We didn't have to put temporary bridge in. We didn't have to spend millions of dollars. And I think we got to be looking at a precast, pre-built bridge for Meadow Way.
Okay, well, I think we're looking at fall for this workshop, and fall's almost here. It's September. The summer's almost gone.
Did I say this fall?
Yeah. But I think we have another resident from Meadow Way wanting to speak on this. Thank you, Frank.
My name is Stephen Wasserman. I live at 1 Meadow Way. And first of all, with regard to how much local input needs to be done, I don't recall, but I don't think very many of you were on this a while ago when this first came up. And there was a lot of people.
We all were, and I know I was personally there.
Okay. There were, the whole room was full of people with regard to it. And the whole philosophy about the bridge changed from a 2-lane bridge to a 1-lane bridge. So I think the local input is really important. My house, of course, at 1 Meadow Way, which is the corner of Cascade and Meadow, is going to be significantly impacted by this. So in addition to the concerns that Frank has, I have some concerns, and that is if you measure from my fence to across the street, which is actually 335 Cascade, which was Scott was here earlier, he had to leave, Davis, it's only between 32 and 33 feet from his fence to my fence. There is no 40-foot right-of-way. So I'm not sure where this 40-foot right-of-way or the town thinks that it is. So that's a concern that we all have, is that currently, from fence to fence, within the first 20 feet from the north side of the bridge, that's all there is. And that includes the ditch on my side and the dirt on his side. In the pictures you see where there's cars parked. So that's a concern that we have. So that's the issue about whether there's the right-of-way. And I'm also looking at the pictures, would like to have answered, not tonight, but at some point in time, is the right-of-way, is that where the property line is, or is the property line somewhere different and the town believes their right-of-way encroaches upon your property? I don't know. I'm not a surveyor, I'm not a land use person, and so I need to know that. Whether the right-of-way, in fact, is the same as your property line. It appears that way on the maps, but then it's impossible because there's just not enough feet there. I think also it's really important for the people that live on Cascade that there's access to the creek, that you can't have these humongous walls where you can't get to the creek. Everybody gets to the creek on my side of the creek at my property, right on my property corner, there's a path to get down. There used to be a rope hanging down from the bridge to get down to the creek. And people go down there all the time, pick blackberries, a variety of things. So that's really important to continue to make sure that there's access to the creek. In addition to that, I'm concerned about drainage. On my side of Meadow, there's a ditch. If that ditch is gone and there isn't some of the alternative drainage put there, my house is going to be swamped. My garage, my backyard. I haven't lived in the Cascades for very long. I moved there in 1977 and lived for 7 or 8 years at 365 Cascade, and in the 82 flood had about $80,000 of damage to my property. I had to build, which I call the Great Wall of Fairfax, which is 17 feet high and 70 feet long, reinforced concrete, in order to get back my backyard and to support my house. The wall cost more than the house cost. Luckily, I'm a lawyer, and I learned how to do flood and landslide law, and I had my insurance company pay for it. But the issue is the drainage. It took many, many years and a lawsuit against the town to get drainage at the corner of Cascade and Meadow. The town said to me that it was my problem because my house was below the street. I put out surveys for everyone past my house, and out of 150 neighbors, about 90 returned the survey saying, of course it's not Steve's problem. We have to drive through 2 feet of water. We have to walk through 2 feet of water. And we had some drains put in. The initial indication when they had the drains put in, they didn't have one in front of my house. I went to the city engineer at the time and said, I don't get it. I'm the squeaky wheel, and you don't put a box in front of my house? And then for $2,500, they put a box there. So I'm concerned about the drainage. Part of the plan seems to say they're taking out the box by the bridge. I don't know if it's going to be redirected. I don't know what they're going to do with the ditch on my side. Something has to be in the plan to accommodate the drainage problems that's there. I'm also concerned that, and maybe this is a first world problem, and that is I have a swimming pool that's by the creek. And if they're going to do some significant construction and pounding and vibrating the ground, I'm concerned that my pool is going to crack. And that may be a first world problem, but I had, about 4 or 5 years ago, I had to redo my pool and got the appropriate permits to do all of that. But I'm concerned that construction in and around, within 10, 15, 20 feet of my pool is going to affect it. So I'm concerned about that. And what Frank said with regard to kind of to see what it is, I'm the type of person, if you're going to do something, you know, if I'm going to buy a new table or buy a new cabinet or something in my house or in my office, I take out, I learned this from a friend of mine, I get newspaper and I tape it together in the size that it's going to be, and I lay it on the ground in my house or in my office or whatever. So I have to walk around it, and I have to see how it feels, the space. And I think that's what I really need out at the bridge. People need to either put like they put poles when you're going to build something, to put, you know, put some tape or put some spray paint or chalk or something to show where these things are going to be, so that people can see it and feel it and walk around it, not just looking on a picture or an overhead or a Google Earth kind of thing. So I think that's really important to consider. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wasserman. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'm going to bring it back to the council. If there's no further questions, I could entertain a motion.
I just wanted to comment. These are all, you know, some very good concerns for us to take note of. And Mr. Wasserman and Mr. Egger, I hope you certainly will participate in the process and bring these forward. And these are all things that I think are anticipated by the contract and community forum process. But thanks for bringing these to our attention now.
Thank you. Would someone like to Thank you for those good comments, Peter. Would someone like to make a motion?
I will.
Okay.
Except that I didn't look at exactly how I was going to state it. I would move to authorize the town manager to execute amendment number 4 to the agreement with California Infrastructure Consultancy, or CIC, to increase the contract amount by $770,000 for a total not to exceed amount of $2,013,360 for the design phase of the Meadowway Bridge, and extend the agreement to September 2018.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nader, for coming. Okay. Item 17, did we lose our planning department director? Oh, why don't we go to item, can we?
Go to item 18.
Let's, oh, here he is.
Oh, there he is. Never mind.
Okay. Jim, would you like to do the staff report?
Yes.
This is on the solar
Sorry.
ordinance. I meant to say
you
that
wrapped that
part.
up quicker than I thought. Okay, good evening. As you may recall, this has been before you before, first on August 5th, and then at your special meeting August 26th. To back up a second, the background is that in 2014, last year, September last year, the Assembly passed Bill 2188, imposing a new requirement on towns and cities to adopt a solar energy permitting ordinance designed to streamline the approval of small residential rooftop solar energy systems. And that was passed with the due date of end of September this year for local municipalities to pass the ordinance. On July 16th this year, the Planning Commission entertained the ordinance and passed Resolution 1524, recommending that you all adopt it, with the caveat of concern over whether or not the language addressing the small rooftop installations to regular solar energy systems was too restrictive, limiting the town's review process. So it came to you with that caveat, and in between it coming to you after the Planning Commission, the town attorney weighed in and said that the language was appropriate with regards to solar energy systems that are larger than 10 kilowatt. At the August 5th meeting, you had a thorough discussion and asked us to take another look, town attorney to take another look. And it came back to you on August 26th, and there was further discussion, and we got into the woods about whether or not the actual AB 2188 was stipulating that in addition to smaller than 10 kilowatt rooftop systems, towns were compelled to address the regular solar energy systems above 10 kilowatts. And so we went back to the drawing board and discussed it further, and town council discussed it with Mimi Newton, Planning Commissioner Newton, who first raised these concerns about the larger than 10 kilowatt systems. And if you recall, on the 26th, you discussed bifurcating this and taking out all references to the larger than 10 kilowatt systems. So you directed us to prepare a rewrite of the ordinance, redacting any reference to the larger systems. 2020 was what it was under. And also requested us to go back to the Planning Commission in the future to discuss the need for an ordinance to address the larger solar systems. So the draft before you tonight is as stipulated, without any reference to the larger than 10 kilowatt systems. The mayor actually chimed in after getting the staff report and the amended ordinance on a couple of points. And you got a slightly amended version of the ordinance, which basically changed a very minor section in it. I believe in section 2, it added, it still erroneously had referred to solar energy systems, so that what was added was small residential rooftops into 2 sections of section 2. And with that, completes the staff report.
Thank you. So any questions of staff? Any public comment? Did you want to make a comment, Michelle?
Yes, I do have a clerk's comment.
All right.
I noticed that section 2 change. Maybe we want to reflect that in the title of the ordinance too, or not?
No,
we don't. Okay, just checking.
Let's look at the title of the ordinance. So really what it was is, oh yeah, I think she's right. I think it wasn't section 2, it's just basically the title of the ordinance should change to be...
Yeah, I'm sorry, we'd actually made that change on August 26th, and it's unfortunate, it's the title from the August 5th agenda.
So it should be, thank you, Town Clerk, so it should be an ordinance of the Town of Fairfax adding Article 2 to Chapter 17.138 of the Town Municipal Code to say small rooftop residential, is that what it is?
Small residential rooftop.
Small residential rooftop solar and renewable energy systems to provide a permitting process for small residential rooftop solar energy systems. Thank you.
The actual ordinance doesn't change.
Does that doesn't change anything in terms of the first reading, does it?
Are we talking about the...
Okay, so what we're looking at, Jim and Garrett,
Sorry.
maybe you all could be paying attention to this, is the title of the ordinance is incorrect.
We got it.
Okay, so we need to make that change. So
Okay.
did I make the motion? Okay, I'm making a motion. Well, I'll just make the motion even though the mayor doesn't usually do it. Introduce and waive first reading and read by title only ordinance number 794, an ordinance of the Town of Fairfax, adding Article 2 to Chapter 17.138 of the Town Municipal Code, in parentheses, small residential rooftop solar and renewable energy systems to provide a permitting process for small residential rooftop solar energy systems.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, and I forgot to mention, we'll be coming back to you in October for the second reading, and also with a resolution adopting the checklist and standard plans.
Thank you.
Okay. So we are moving on to item 18. And that is, I'm sorry, I'm going slow. Introduction and first reading by title only of an ordinance amending Chapter 3.36 public bidding of the Fairfax Town Code to increase contract award limits per the Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act. Garrett, would you like to do the staff report?
Thank you. So, as background, back in 1995, the town adopted this ordinance, making the town subject to the Uniform Construction Cost Accounting procedures set forth in the Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act, which I will just refer to now as UPCA. So, UPCA. And what we've done is we're recommending changes to actually update the contractual limits of UPCA. They've never been changed in our ordinance since 1995. Typically, the state every about 5 years adjusts it based on some engineering index to increase the amounts. So here's really the key changes are. One is it increases the limits from $15,000 to $45,000 for those public projects which may be performed by employees. We refer to that as force account, or negotiated contract or purchase order approved by the town manager. This section, though, is subject to the administrative purchasing policy that was approved by council by resolution. That's actually part of the supplemental materials you receive. And under that policy, the town manager can only approve contracts up to $15,000. So under this scenario, while maybe I can negotiate a contract of $45,000, it would still go to the council for approval because it would exceed my authority. The other changes, it increases the limit for something we call informal bidding process. So increases that limit from $50,000 to $175,000 or less. And the last significant change This increases the limits for actual formal bidding from $50,000 to more than $175,000. So I think what I'd like to do is kind of focus on what does that really mean, because I know people think bidding, oh, you're not going to get the best price. What does that mean? Okay, so negotiated contracts are something where we sit down with a contractor and we say, okay, what's it going to cost to do this? And we go back and forth what that price is. That's for public works projects of less than $45,000. That's what it will allow us to do this. What that does is it does several things. One, we'll get a better price, because typically if you have to do a bid package for something slightly more than 15 and less than 45, it's very labor intensive. It adds a lot of time because the bid period is 28 days. And most likely a lot of contractors are not going to go through the effort of preparing a bid for that small amount. An example that we didn't talk about is Manzanita. And in Manzanita, you recall in December, you made some findings that allowed us to go ahead and pursue that contract and not follow our public bidding. Well, what I did was I had our consultant prepare a bid package anyway, and I gave it to 10 contractors that we had talked to, 4 of which were very interested in the contract, 4 of which that we had talked to get our estimate for the cost. Turns out no one bid on the project except for one firm. All the others said, well, we were interested in the beginning, but the bid package for a project that's not that much is so onerous, we're busy, we just couldn't be bothered. And what happens, not necessarily with that project, but what happens if you bid a project, sometimes what happens is contractors pretty much wait till the last minute to submit their package. Deadlines too, they all stand around at 1:59 and look at each other to see who's going to submit their bid. If no one submits a bid, the one contractor is there, and this is common, they'll either modify their bid on the spot, submit it by the deadline, or they'll have an alternate package in their hand, turn that in. And that would be a higher amount. So just because you bid something doesn't mean you're going to get a lower price for the lower projects. Now, that being said, what's the difference between informal and formal bidding? For our town's purposes, there is no difference. Really, the difference has to do with advertising. In an informal bid, and we have these lists, you can maintain a list of contractors by category. However, what happens is they have to submit certain information to you that gets on the list. And because you maintain this list, you can just give the bid to those people on the list and it bids that way. We don't use those lists at all. The main problem being there's not very many contractors have ever submitted to be on that list. We've followed the process. We submit to the exchanges, and no one just really has done that. So it serves no purpose to us because there's only a couple people on it, so that's going to defeat the whole purpose. But in terms of the package, your bid package has all sorts of information. They have to prepare a bid bond, there's the contract, and there's all these general conditions. Very specific. They're very specific, and they have to honor their bid. If we award to the lowest responsible bidder, they have to honor what's in there, whether or not it's going to cost them more or not, set aside change orders for costs they believe that weren't identified in the design and specs. For an informal bid, it's not very clear how different your bid package could be. It's very much a gray area. Seems with the benefit to the larger counties like LA and things like that is they have more extensive lists, so they save on the advertising. They might actually do the same type of packet. So for our purposes, because it's not very clear, we do the same thing for formal and informal in terms of a bid package. But keeping the ordinance consistent with UPCA would be a good thing, because on the odd chance in the future we actually get extensive lists for informal bidding by category, could be a benefit to the town. But overall, the major benefit is increasing the limit of $15,000 to $45,000. Gave much more flexibility to staff, could do things quicker, and actually get better pricing to the town. But the most important thing with all that is anything over $15,000, unless we're doing it in-house, all comes to the council for approval. So you'll always approve something for that amount. And typically we always try to get more than one estimate when it comes to any type of work, set aside the bidding, but it just depends on the project. So hopefully that addresses what I believe might be some of the major concerns, because it's kind of very confusing about how this all works in terms of formal and informal bidding. For all practical matters, it's the same for us until we can get a list that actually meets our needs better. And with that, that concludes the staff report. Available for any questions.
Go ahead, Renee.
Yeah, I have a question. Just in the discussion section, second paragraph, when you talk about the recommending the amendment to the chapter to reflect increases in UPCA's contractual limits, and that it'll automatically apply to this chapter. Could you explain exactly what that means and how it relates to? I think it would be under the public bidding part of the
right. So what that means is, like I said, the state under UPCA, the state actually increases the contract amounts based on an engineering index for the cost of construction. What this would do, that provision would mean that our limits would automatically get adjusted by that increase, so we wouldn't always have to go back to modify the ordinance. So it automatically would adjust with changes to the contractual limits that's set by the state under UPCA.
What?
Go ahead, David.
Sorry, I didn't look over. Why wouldn't we just incorporate the state changes by reference?
I think you can do that. I think all I was doing was just mimicking what was there and adding the amounts here within the town ordinance, so it's easier to see.
Right, but we sort of got into this conversation in the solar thing last week, is that the state, we are really small. We have a code book which rapidly gets out of whack very quickly, and it is, in my opinion, burdensome upon staff to constantly be making these changes, particularly since we may not be fully cognizant of them as quickly as we should. However, if we just more aggressively did things, incorporated state changes by reference of state law, then we wouldn't be chasing our tail, particularly one that appears not to have wagged for quite a number of decades.
Peter, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'll address David's comment a little later maybe, but I just want to ask Garrett a couple questions. I have a slightly different view than David on that. I hear you, and I understand, the burdensomeness of having to go through the bid process, weighing that versus, we are a small town. We have a smaller budget than most cities. But I'm curious, what are some of the costs that you have to entail or incur every time you do a bid process for, say, a smaller contract under, $40,000 now?
So what would happen is we prepare the bid pack. Our docs are somewhere between 100 and 200 pages. What we'd have is we have the engineer, once they kind of design the plan, and then the specifications, then what we do is you need to insert all that information into the bid pack. And it's not just in one spot. You have to go and you look through and you go, okay, in this spot, you have to put where you're going to put the quantities. Okay, let's break that all out. Back over here, you have certain conditions. If we have a list of general conditions of a project of like template of 200, you need to go through each one, figure out what's applicable, what's not, add that in there. So I would say for small projects, to prepare a bid pack, you're talking, that's always a few $1,000s. It adds automatically to a project. Plus we have to advertise. I think we send it to trade journals. I think we might actually put something in the paper. I can't really remember. And then we have the packets we have to print up, make available. Usually we have them go to the contractor, but we put it online, we do this. So it adds a lot more staff time, because not only am I having the contractual engineer put the information together, as staff, we need to at least take a look to make sure it somewhat reflects what we think the project's supposed to be. So I'm not an engineer, so I sometimes ask our contracting engineer to check on the other engineer to see if it represents what we're doing, and I ask our building official. And so for a project that small scale, it's very labor intensive. We're a small town, which means we don't have very many staff. And as your acting public works director, I could say I'm not really qualified to look over these bid packages very well, other than to look for the basic type of things. I couldn't tell you on the plans and specs if the general conditions are correct all the time. But I do know when we negotiate projects and have plans and specs, because it's just the plan, the specs, I can understand that well enough to ask, hey, basically, how much is this going to cost? And what exactly do you see as the issues? And then it's easier dialogue. But we can't do that on bids. Pretty much we could have a pre-bid meeting and we can answer what's requested if someone's asking clarification on the bid pack, but then we have to send it out to all the exchanges and all the bid holders so that everyone has the same information that they're bidding from. It gets very complicated for a very small project. It's really not worth the cost. You might as well spend that money on your contingency fund for the project.
How many contracts in a 12-month period between $15,000 and $45,000 have you been put out to bid?
I'd say this year, let's see, between 15 and well, that's a little difficult because of how we do it. I'd say it's true we don't do that many, but I could tell you this would make some things easier, because if we go out for slurry seal or we go out for striping, which we haven't, but we're planning to, this would make things easier. This would make things easier for those rapid flashing beacon systems. To buy the system, pretty much how I have to do is I actually order this system, it's delivered, and then I contract with a contractor to install it. It would be much easier if I could have the contractor purchase the system directly, take us out of the middleman role, and they install it and they guarantee it. Because that's always more than $15,000. Installing rapid flashing beacon system, just the one, it's always more than 15.
And changing this limit, does that affect what contracts come before us?
No. Everything over $15,000 goes to the council for approval.
Okay, so this ordinance is not changing that requirement?
No, you'd have to change the administrative purchasing guidelines to do that.
Okay,
that'd be a different issue. Do I think my limit should be higher? Sure, but that's not the issue tonight.
Right. Okay, thanks.
So let me follow up. So the protections are the same. The council still retains the level of oversight that it always did. However, we've made a Faustian deal, if you will, with our budget gods, which is to limit forever the number of staff that we have. We don't have a public works director. We have a person wearing two hats. So it seems incumbent upon us that we have to massage and manipulate the process where possible so that we can retain the appropriate oversight, but curb the bureaucratic morass and clear the undergrowth so that we can get the best price and use our staff's time in the most effective manner.
I think I'd like to
balance, yeah.
I think I'd like to comment. So I did a little research on this, and I worked in the state for a number of years, and I had authority to sign $10 million contracts. And I know. Let me sign that sucker. But I will say that even small state agencies tend to have much larger budgets than Fairfax had, and their contracts tend to be bigger. So in looking at this stuff, you know, every 5 years, the commission goes back to the state controller to see if they should increase this. My feeling is, looking at this, that increasing the limit from 15 to 45 may be okay for that first thing. I have significant problems with not going out to bid on things like, we don't have that many contracts for $175,000 and up. I think I would be more amenable to lowering those limits and going out to formal bid maybe at $100,000. And I don't think, David, that our job, you know, we have a very small budget, and I think our job is very, very cautious. And I think Garrett made a good point that on these really small things going out to bid, you're not really doing what you want to do. But I think at $100,000 going out to bid, contractors are going to be looking at that, and those are realistic things. And I think in order to make sure that we're really watching our budget and making sure that we're procuring the best contractors, I don't feel comfortable with just adopting this UPCO, whatever we're calling it. I feel that we could amend these limits to make it more workable. And I think, I felt more comfort when I went back to you because I hadn't remembered the administrative purchases policy. And, knowing that over 15, you still have to come to us. But I think, so maybe number A, increasing the limit from 15 to 45 to allow those projects to go the way UPCA envisions it. But then increasing the limits, I think 100,000 makes more sense for a small town of our nature. So we can really make sure we're getting the best products. And I think we're being fiscally prudent. And I don't think everything from the state works for a smaller jurisdiction like ours. But I think that would give you more flexibility. And I think we would ensure that we're not using staff time unwisely, but yet we would get better contracts. So what that means is I don't know where other folks feel on that, or initially I was thinking 75K rather than 100K, but I think we'd get more responsible bidders for 100K and over. But that changes the language in the ordinance, and I don't know if rather than doing that here, we'd want to do a first reading next time, because one of the things I saw is under A, where you talk about the approval of contracts by town managers subject to the town's administrative purchasing policies adopted by council resolution. I think in order to be clear what we're talking about, we would want to reference resolution 1330.
You may change it from time to time.
Well, I think that the thing that worries me is that we want to be clear. It's one thing, we have a lot of trust in your abilities. The day that you walk out the door, who knows who our next town manager will be?
We'll be selecting it. And if they don't meet the standards of Garrett or better, they're not coming to work here.
All right, well, that's great. But I think I'm just trying to be cautious so that we're clear what we're talking about.
So if it's as simple as changing to 175 to 100, that will work. And if it's as simple as saying resolution 13-30, that would work.
And also taking D out, because I don't agree with this automatic adjustment.
Okay, sure. I mean, the reality is for staff, going from 15,000 to 45,000 is a big deal. If UPCA were to change 5 years from now and I made the 45, 50, that's probably not even worth modifying the ordinance for. So that's fine. For staff perspective, it's really the first one that's the biggest deal. But those changes we could just do right now. Well, assuming the council's fine with that, that's no big deal to incorporate those changes right now.
And Barbara, I'm sorry, I missed, you said the reference to
resolution
which?
So you have it in your supplemental packet. Resolution 13-30 is the administrative purchasing policy.
Right.
It's in your supplemental packet.
Yeah, I have that.
And I had asked Garrett to give that to us because I knew you hadn't seen it and I knew I didn't have a copy of it. So what I would say is under A, you would be specific pointing out that resolution, which I know David won't like. B and C, change the number to 100,000 and take out D.
Okay, I agree, definitely removing D, because I don't think we should be tied to UPQA. And I think sort of that 20-year lag is actually good for us, because I think the rest of California will probably need to increase their contracting ability more than we will. So that's actually kind of a good thing. So I support striking D, and I support those changes. I guess what I'm curious about is that B and C are the point at which the contract has to be let by formal procedures versus informal procedures. Is that correct?
That's correct. And right now, the big difference in informal is the advertising noticing. And because our lists aren't very good or meet the standards, we do formal bids right now. We don't do informal, we just do formal.
And so, Barbara, what I'm wondering is if, in light of that, if you think it still makes sense to have it, that trigger point between formal and informal be 100 versus what he's proposing at 175. Because that I think, because that's what you're talking about.
What I'm saying is, I'm saying that any contract, I'm saying 100,000 is reasonable to go out for formal or informal, should we ever do that, but not going all the way to 175K.
Okay, but what this is proposing is that basically anything above, if this is enacted with the $45,000 limit, let me just clarify my understanding, is that would have to, if it's above 45,000, it would have to go out for informal bidding, and then if it's above 175, it would have to go to formal bidding. Is that correct?
Under the mayor's proposal, between 45 and 100 be informal bidding. Anything over 100 would be formal bidding. Oh wait, I said it wrong. Between 45 and 100 is informal bidding. Anything over 100 is formal bidding. As a matter of practice at this moment, anything over 45 we do as a formal bid.
Right, and so Barbara, I'm wondering if we're given the explanation by Garrett, if that is a useful to lower that threshold to 100,000 for formal versus informal bidding.
That's what I'm saying, is that I'm saying that above 100K, you need to do formal bidding. I think 175 is too high.
For formal bidding, okay.
Right.
But I'm sorry, I don't understand.
It's the same
'Cause
thing as
I thought we were
happening
doing
either
the
way.
same thing. I mean, at 175, I mean, above 45, you were doing the same bidding process.
Well, I'm making it
formal or
confusing.
informal.
I'm just saying the mayor's proposal is change the 175 to 100 in B and C,
Right.
which is fine. I'm just saying as a matter of practice right now, just a matter of practice. As a matter of practice, we don't do informal bidding because the list that you're required to maintain per UPCA, we don't have an extensive enough list, so there's no benefit to us, so we
Okay.
don't do it.
Right, I understand, but what I don't understand is, Barbara, you said anything over 100 should certainly be a formal bidding process, but that's what we do anyway. So keeping it at 100 is to, what's?
I don't think that's what we do anyway. Right now, what we're doing is anything over 15K.
Sorry, yes, you're talking about currently what we do under the old ordinance? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. How it works right now, anything under 15 is negotiated. Anything between 15 and 50 is informal. Anything over 50 is formal. That's what it is currently. All right, okay. So
yeah.
Maybe I'm confusing it just because I'm just saying as a matter of practice, there's no difference between informal and formal for us. But I'm thinking in the future, if we had good contractor lists for informal, there could be a benefit to the town.
Yeah. Now, one of the other things, though, to clarify, is the amount of time that it needs to be open for bidding and stuff. I mean, there's a difference between formal and informal then, isn't there?
No, not really.
Not just in the way we do it?
No, all it has to do is you send the notices to people on the list as opposed to advertise it to the exchanges is the primary difference.
Okay. And how much effort has been made to beef up that list?
We followed the state guidelines because you have to follow the state guidelines, and we sent it to all the exchanges we were required to send it to, and I think we got back 4.
Yeah.
For all the different categories. I forget how many.
Because we're too small potatoes or something.
Yeah, and then some of them were from LA, and so we just said, this isn't working. Now, that being said, it would take a lot of time to try to get people to actually get on that list, which we can do, but at this point, it's just not worth the effort.
Sounds it. Well, I mean, I guess, I mean, I can really see the advantage to going to that, when I was first reading this, it was the oversight policy, I thought was going to be affected. And so I was like, well, wait a minute. But, since that's still in place, I can really see the advantage of going to the 45,
Right, so that's what I think Garrett is most interested in.
Yeah. I mean, and if it's in effect 50 now, where we go from informal to formal, why are we picking 45?
45 is the cutoff point at which it has to go from negotiated to informal bid. And then the next number,
per UPCA, their guidelines.
Per UPCA, they would do 45, 175, 175. I think the proposal is keep the 45, change the 175 to 100, add the resolution number, get rid of section D, and that would be perfect.
Yeah.
From staff's
I'm
perspective.
good with that.
Actually,
I'm
take
good.
a look at
good.
3.36.010. It seems to say that we are subject to the to UPCA. The terms referencing shall have the meanings ascribed to them under UPCA, and then in the very next section, we decide to go on our Fairfax way. So some qualifying language in .010 might be appropriate. If the town attorney thinks it's public. Read 3.36010, adoption of UPCA. It says the town council elects to become subject to the uniform procedures set forth in UPCA, and the terms referenced to herein shall have the meanings ascribed to them in UPCA, which is great if we're going to follow UPCA. But we're not following UPCA strictly. We are, it's UPCA light.
well, David, I read UPCA, and what this is that we're agreeing to follow the guidelines, but we're not bound to the monetary minimums of UPCA, is my understanding.
What does it say that?
It just says that we're following the accounting procedures.
Nah, I would read procedures broadly to incorporate the numbers. I don't want to put a monkey wrench here. I think 010 would have to have some qualifying language in order for us to then muck around with the numbers in 020, which, is perfectly okay. But I don't think you can have them. Those two are slightly at odds. Not terribly at odds, slightly at odds.
So David's making a good point. Janet's shaking her head. Would this mean that we would add something saying that
the town council, except as specifically noted, or except as it goes on its merry
Except
way,
as noted.
accepted as otherwise provided,
Right.
elects to become subject. Yeah, something like that.
That sounds good, except as otherwise provided herein. Thank you for catching that.
It's too small to even get a kudo.
Oh, come on, take it. You won't get another one. Okay, so.
Well, just for our edification, section, Public Contracting Code, section 22032.
What are you reading?
Public Contract Code, section 22032. That's
Is
in
that
the,
something that you brought with you?
Yeah.
Okay, because we don't have that.
No, but
We're
it
all
says,
looking for that.
It says public projects of $45,000 or less may be performed. So it's permissive, and then likewise limits of $175,000 or less may be let to contract. So the language is permissive in the statute. But I'm perfectly happy.
Let's
with
leave David's kudo.
language
We like David's kudo.
to get it across the finish line.
Okay, so, all right, so we're going to have, except as otherwise provided herein under 3.36.010. We like A under 3.36020. I think we're changing B to 100. C 100, and then taking out D.
And under A, did you not want to put the resolution number?
Oh, yeah, and the resolution
13.
number 1330. Thank you, clerk.
Can I just ask, before we go forward and get this done, Garrett, the 175, what's the difference in terms of the on-the-ground reality of what you can do with that? Does it matter?
It doesn't matter. For our purposes, it doesn't matter. I just wanted to keep it consistent with UPCA so it wouldn't be confusing to people. But what you're proposing is fine. I mean, we're a small community. The main thing was the negotiated contract amount.
Right, got it. Thanks.
Okay, so could we take a motion? Who wants to make it? David,
Sure.
you want to make it?
I'll do the introduction and first reading and read by title only, an ordinance of the town of Fairfax amending chapter 3.36, public bidding, the town code to increase the contract award limits as specifically set forth in 3.36.020. Okay, which is different from those of the Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act. Okay, council?
And that's why you left that out of the title.
Yes.
Okay, and anyone want to make a second?
David, are you incorporating the numerical discussions?
By specifically calling out the numbers that we have discussed, the 3.36020, A at 45, B at 100, and C at 100.
And also striking D.
And those other changes as requested.
And having resolution 13.30 in A.
Yeah.
Okay, does someone want to make a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. With that, I believe we are adjourned.
All right, let's go.